Committee for Thursday, October 17th, 2013 at 5:41 is called to order. Carla, could you do the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Standish. Here. Vice Chairman Davis.
Here.
Member Heislop.
Present.
Member Ryan.
Here.
Member Bourne.
Here.
And are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
No corrections, but I would like to,
Move things around?
with your approval, make an opening statement before we launch into the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all right. Let's see. Okay, minutes. And may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Approve the minutes. Second.
Madam Chair, the motion that was made on page 3
Oh,
of 8,
hold on. Page 3.
unless I'm way off, that's not correct.
Which one are we talking about? The committee Ryan moved to approve recommending?
Yeah. That motion should read, committee member Ryan moved to approve recommending to the town council the addition of section 05-015, F. With regard to agricultural land classification and right to farm determinations, the town defers to applicable state statutes and court precedents. It is the responsibility of a landowner to understand and qualify for any appropriate agricultural land classification.
Was that the first two sentences of that whole thing? Because I remember it was a big paragraph, we said the first two sentences.
Yeah, as opposed to what's in here now, that's.
Right.
Should,
Yeah, because you basically took that memo and just
yeah.
deleted the last 5 or 6 words.
Right.
That's right. That's kind of a critical recommendation or motion from the.
Okay, let me see, does any, John, I think I have that copy right here.
Yeah, the wording of that motion is okay if you had the wording of the memo that you circled in front of you.
Well, and I have your actual statement here, and it said with regard to agricultural land classification. Now, you specifically cited a statute, though. You just.
No, I read right from John's memo, and we deleted the last sentence.
Right. Just delete 5 words of the last sentence, 5 or 6 words in the last
So
sentence.
what I just read was what the.
Could you show me what you're reading, because I'll show you what I have, and that's why I'm concerned that we're reading different documents.
Well, no, I just wrote it down because I just wrote it from.
All right, John, do you have your copy?
Yeah.
Could you pass it down, and, because I have this one, and I thought.
Well, that's it. Let me just show you.
Yeah.
It's the quote. Give it to me.
Here, why don't you,
Highlight.
yeah, what he's talking about, because.
Okay, that's what I highlighted. With no cross-outs, just a period after classification.
Okay, what we had here was with regard to agricultural land classification and right to farm determinations, the town defers to applicable state statutes and court precedents. It is the responsibility.
Period.
Period.
And then-
Yeah, period. New
Period. Okay, new sentence. It is the responsibility of a landowner to understand and qualify for any appropriate agricultural land classification. Period.
Right.
Okay,
Does that
that's
have an S on the end of it? Should that have an S on it?
classifications.
That's what I just read.
Period. Okay, I thought I heard you say a numerical. And that passed 4-0. I mean, 4-1.
Well, we were, we're adding section 05-015F, that's what I put in there.
Yeah, that's the introductory section.
That's the new section that we're adding to the code,
Well, there is that section in the code now.
not F.
Not F, right. Maybe answer E.
Did we discuss that at the last meeting?
Yeah, that's where
Yeah.
that's what Jim,
That's what we added.
that's what Jim proposed.
Why is this getting brought back up right now?
He's
It's
trying to reflect
not-
the
Because the
conversation.
motion that's in the minutes is not right.
Right, that's not, but, you know, I understand, I had this sentence, I got that, I know we went back and forth, and you're saying we're adding section what now, please?
We're adding section 05-015F, which reads
That.
what you just read.
Right.
He just named that.
That's all I want, I just want
Yeah, you
clarification, please.
specified where he was putting it in the code.
Okay. As long as that is specifically to what we just said. Okay, and that passed 4-1.
Right.
All right, so that'll be amended. So, we approve the minutes then with that section amended?
I need a second. I have a motion on the table by Mr. Heisler.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Okay.
I'm sorry, what did I motion?
Well, you moved to approve it, but then I changed it to move to approve the minutes as amended.
I didn't move to approve anything.
I thought you did.
I mean, you can put me there, I don't care, but I didn't.
Oh, I thought it was you that,
No, ma'am.
I didn't look up, but it sounded like your voice.
No, but that's fine. Sure, why not?
Sorry.
That's okay. I wanted to extract the word.
Okay,
I seconded it.
I thought I was, all right.
I didn't think anybody seconded. I thought Jim interrupted
thought I
immediately to stop it before.
I think it was Howard.
Oh, it was
made the
Howard?
motion, I think John seconded, and then I had a question.
Would you like me to make that correction, and I can do that?
That's
Yes,
fine.
sure.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll look up from now on.
Okay. Oh, no. Sorry. Okay, item 3 of the regular agenda, I'm trying to find it here. Old business.
So before we launch into the
Oh,
open
here, I
session,
see the problem, I'm looking at, what am I looking at? We have an addendum 1, is that?
Well, that was the minutes, so we're back to the regular agenda.
Okay.
so with your indulgence, Madam Chair, this would be a good place for me to make
Yes,
the
please.
things that I wanted to talk to you about. As you know, I guess it was 2 meetings back, we had identified a schedule for future meetings, and we identified that we would try to meet twice in November, on the 7th and 21st, and then we would see how December goes. However, one of the issues that has come up is, the work authorization which the town manager company is working under is starting to get very close to being in arrears because of a couple of reasons. Number one, I think we have taken some time on some items that, we just haven't been able to totally reconcile. But the second, and probably the more important reason, is the town council did approve staff moving forward on the special exceptions, which you did go ahead and reconcile. And that is not, the special exception portion of this, as far as doing the actual amendment, was not envisioned as part of the work on this work authorization. So what I'm asking the committee is, I do believe that we should not have our meeting on the 7th. I do plan to go to town council, present the situation in order to address the funding issue. What I'm proposing is that we have our meeting on the 21st, as we normally would, and try to, if needed and if necessary, get 2 meetings in December. We can try to have them earlier in the month before there's any conflicts with any holidays or issues.
Mark, you're talking about November?
November 21st.
November, okay.
November and December. That would give us, if need, you sunset at the end of December. So pretty much, from what I can understand from council, I don't think there are going to be any new issues with the exception of what we're trying to address on the agenda today. There's a lot on the agenda today. I'm sure we're not going to get through all of it. But I think maybe we might even be able to do it in 2 meetings. But I I'd like to hold off the November meeting to the 21st, which will be our normally scheduled meeting, and then based upon that, we'll see what we need to do in December.
So you're just taking out November 7th.
That's all, until we can get the funding situation wrapped up as to what we're going to do.
You've got a town council meeting on the 5th.
That's correct. But it won't be time enough to get an agenda out reading it for some.
So we are taking it out?
Yeah, that's our recommendation. We'll add it into December. I think we can get the rest of this agenda done in 3 meetings, assuming there are no other added items. I mean, sometimes council does come up with a debate, an issue at council meeting, I'll say, I'll take that to the ULDC. You know.
I complained to Ron General about that whole situation, that we move forward on several items and then it's put aside, and they keep coming up with new stuff for us, and a lot of stuff really isn't relevant, as I spoke on last time. And he said he had no problem with creating a situation where it was understood that any new business that town council came up with would come in after we finished all our old business.
You mean after this year?
Well, just generally. In other words, most meetings you come here and saying that town council wants us to look at such and such. And all of a sudden that takes precedent over a lot of the things that we have been tabling for the next meeting and the next meeting and the next meeting. And I understand you're given direction by town council. And they say all of a sudden, okay, we want the ULDC committee to look at this. Okay, it's your responsibility to put it forward, but it's put forward at the expense of the stuff that was left over from the week before and the week before that. And so I'm looking at the correct way to handle this, where you can go to the town council and explain to them that this is a situation that is not productive unless it's a dire emergency for the ULDC committee to immediately look at something. They need to proceed with the business that's already on the table and defer any new suggestions until those things are handled.
Well, essentially, I agree with that. I mean, the last 3 council meetings, I kind of indicated we're coming up close to the sunset, and if you have anything new that you wanted the committee to have, now would be the time to tell us so we can get it in. Having said that, I will tell you too, I had an inquiry today from a member of council who looked at the agenda and said, what are all these things on here? We didn't give these to the committee. And I'm confused, and I went, well, my response was, oh yes, the 3 of the items that you have still on your agenda were items that we originally took to town council back on October 2nd, 2012. And it was a volume of stuff. It was the chapter 87, floodplain stuff, it was the non-conforming, which we're going to talk about today, that's still on our agenda. So there's 3 items that we've been trying to get to, and, you know, at the point you're making for the whole year. And I just indicated that that's why you might not remember them. But, you know, now I think we're at the point where we pretty much have wrapped up a lot of the ancillary stuff that's been coming up so that we can, you know, try to get to these. And I think, you know, I think that there's enough time. I think enough time to have a good discussion. I think we can probably go till 8, 7:30, 8:30, whatever you guys want to do, but I think we can probably make some good progress today in the next future meetings.
Chair? Yeah, one of the main items, as I recall, was with reference to the legacy operations and certain other operations that weren't exactly fitting into the code, that we were to simplify the special exceptions process. We spent a lot of time on that, and I think you did distill that down to some specific recommendations to the town council. I mean, that's pretty well.
You're gonna see that tonight too, in the non-conforming. Jim has some proposals that we'll go over. I don't know if you had a chance to look at them, but they're in there, and I think that's gonna get us off the
But I
ground.
mean, the mechanics of simplifying it, that's pretty well tied down as a recommendation, because I thought that was one of our major tests.
Right, but it got ambushed by some other things that got brought up during the past few months and got derailed from the original discussion.
And I don't expect any more issues. I mean, you never know what a council meeting, something will come up, but I mean, I don't expect any, because I mean, you know, pretty much we've gone to the well 3 times trying to make sure they get anything they can think of.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, the special exception is going to the council on first reading on the 5th.
Okay. Because I thought that was pretty well tied down. You guys have done a good job of distilling an awful lot of conversation.
So we'll see that in the town, we can look at that if you want on the website, on the town agenda, you can see what's in there. And you can go to the town meeting and make your comments there, you're not restrained to just this committee. All right, we
Okay, thank you.
continue. Okay, we are now on item 3, regular business. Item A, old business, discussion of agricultural issues. Did I miss something, Jim?
No.
You ready to go?
Yeah, well, I mean, at the last meeting, I handed out, I'm not sure if I handed out or I know we did email out all of the town code sections that have anything to do with agriculture on October 10th. And I may have handed out the versions of it at the meeting last month also. When I sent out the October 10th email, I put a matrix.
Right.
And that matrix is actually a suggested means of reviewing the town's code as it relates to agriculture. The matrix has every section listed on it. And the first column is the page of the handout that section is on. And then the third column is what that section or what that page deals with. And then the next 4 columns essentially give you 4 options as to how you want to deal with that section.
Where are you, Jim? So I can-
Well,
It was emailed.
Yeah.
Do you want, I can pass
That
it
was
down
an
on,
email
did you
that I-
have it? Do you want to take a
that I
look?
had sent
Yeah,
out.
let me just make sure I know
Or
what
like
you're talking
something.
about.
Here it is.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, it's an efficient, it's a very efficient matrix. There's some issues though, since, again, we're discussing agriculture, there's the ag issue.
Yeah.
Of course, the idea wasn't to give you homework, it's if you wanted to look at it and write it.
See the matrix, and what he's talking about is columns, and he's no circles and put page numbers at the bottom of each page, and his matrix refers to the page where we would find that, and
Yeah, that's great.
Very
For some reason I missed it.
It's about 73 pages.
it was the 10, it was,
Yeah, it's 73 pages, but most of, I put entire sections of the code and I highlighted in yellow where that section addressed agriculture. So it really is, it's 73 pages long, but it's not that much material, really.
It's not all that.
No, because you had a bunch of just little words.
Yes, that's exactly right. So what I'm suggesting, we incorporated that language last month into the introduction to the code. It essentially says Florida statutes.
right, that's my next question, is so how do we just, and they had that motion?
Yeah, that's right. Now, looking at it from one end of the spectrum, you can say, okay, that sentence that we added in the code last month, that does it, we don't need anything else.
Right.
So you could make a blanket recommendation to say, take this all out. I'm not sure that that's the appropriate way to do it, because I think that if you're going to take language out, you should at least know what that language is.
Okay.
And that's why I put together all of these pages. And I'm giving you 4 options for each of those highlighted areas. To keep it in the code as it is, move it to section 65 of the code, which is agriculture. That section 65 is titled agriculture, so we could include everything in the code that relates to agriculture. Incorporate it into one section. So if somebody wants to find out about agriculture, go to section 65 and it's all there. The third column is deleted. If you want to go through and say let's delete a section, then we'll delete it. And then the fourth column is if we want to take agriculture out of the ULDC but still have an agricultural code, we would move it to a new ordinance. So that we still would have the issue of agriculture addressed, where residents and town staff could go to that specific ordinance to have questions answered about agriculture.
Yeah, I guess I missed the 10th email, but I thought that you had done a job that was essentially that when you gave us this handout with the state statutes and the map, and then the copies of the sections of the code that were highlighted.
Yes, I did. Yeah, that is.
We had this a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah, that's right. That didn't have page numbers on it, which made it hard to use. So what I did was I took that, I numbered all the pages, and I attached the matrix to it, so.
For efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, so essentially it's this information, but it's organized and paged.
Better and easier to use.
Okay.
At this point, Jim, it might be a good point for me to discuss what I handed out, and that perhaps I handed it out, you advised me, Mark or Perla, the appropriate way to do this. There's a Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission, and they have a memo out regarding local ordinances and regulation of captive wildlife. I think it's very important that the town read this and the court case, a recent court case. It's something that takes more than 5 minutes. And I'm not gonna say here, give us your opinion now, but I think it's very important we have this on the next agenda. It kind of ties into what's going on here, and we may be talking about things we shouldn't be talking about. Because if you go to, on the legal page 28, I have not passed this out, but I've given it to Mark, and I asked Mark and Jim to look at page 28, item 4. In this court finding, you'll see that it said claims that Orange County's land use regulations are unlawful. So I want to make sure that this committee is not being asked to review things that should not be reviewed legally. That's my concern. I don't want to waste the town's time, the town's money, and I bring it to your attention for you to advise us at the next meeting. I didn't have a chance to make copies for everyone, so. Howard?
I don't quite understand the verbiage there, because it was my understanding from reading through it that it is not prohibited for us to review it, but we should maybe be considering removing all the language that regulates captive wildlife from the ULDC, because the ULDC cannot do that, only FWC can do that.
Right.
So, all right, so I understand.
I think you said the same thing both ways. You're just more eloquent, as always, Howard. I don't have your gift of verbiage. John?
Actually, I've seen this internal opinion before.
Okay.
It was issued in 2007.
Yeah.
And the important thing there was on page 4 of that memo that you did hand out. The caption, types of actions or ordinances which are authorized. The big focus of this was that there are certain nuisance regulations that local towns can adopt as long as they don't distinguish between
Right.
nuisances from animals and nuisances from other sources.
Right.
So that, I think that what the town has done with respect to noise, odor, and other defined nuisances, as long as those apply to the operation of anything in the groves and don't distinguish against,
Well, I just wanted to make sure that Mark has this and has time to review it, in addition to the court case information that I've provided to him. And also for the benefit of the rest of the members who haven't seen this, I just want to make sure they're aware of this document.
Well, this, at first glance, this seems to allow local governments to do a lot of regulation.
Pardon?
Right.
This seems to allow local governments to do a lot of regulation.
There's certain
In the area of public nuisance.
In certain areas.
page, but the Florida Wild, as we have to be very careful, because Florida Wildlife has jurisdiction on some things. I just want to make sure.
Captive wildlife.
I mean, in our ULDC, it says you have to have a 501c3 corporation to own certain wildlife.
And
That's ridiculous. I mean, that's, stuff like that is just, in other words, if you're not Dr. Paul Riley, you can't have it.
All right, I just want to,
And
and
that's
that's
going to
just,
take agriculture out of, and it's a residential area only, because if it's a residential use only zoning area, then you cannot have all those animals
Yeah.
on page 4. So,
But we don't have any residential use only areas, ours
but if
are
you
all
guys take
ag revs.
agriculture out, you will.
No.
But that's what everybody's been trying to do.
No, that one statement.
We're costing more.
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
I'm
trying to make that introductory
Sure.
statement.
That we're,
residential only.
okay,
Yes.
that-
So, yeah, for 3 meetings.
Perfect.
And then all these apply.
well, what I'd like to point out too is the way I read page 4 is it refers to areas that are residential use only. That's why I want Mark to look at this, because it can be interpreted both ways, and I read it as residential use only. We are not residential use only, we are residential ag. So, Mark, when you look at this, please look at page 4. I have a concern there on the noise. That is for residential use only, and we are residential ag.
I don't think that's.
That's John, that's why I'm asking Mark and Jim
Yeah.
to look it over. It's very clear when they say residential use only.
That applies to the first sentence. That's a general
Okay,
statement. in the
all right,
first
so-
sentence.
Jim, can I get my matrix back?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It wasn't for you to keep, John.
Well, you know, I just
He's
want to
got,
make sure.
he just needs the matrix. You just need, really what you said, John, is correct, that you just need actually, this page.
Right.
All right, so discussion of agricultural issues.
Okay, well, I guess my first basic question is, do we want to go through this exercise? Or there had been some discussion previously about take out all reference. I mean, it can be as simple as that, or we want to look at the different sections and make decisions based on what each section has to say.
Okay.
I don't have one in front of me. I thought it was in that package you gave.
You want that package?
Yeah, let me have it now since John just gave it back to you. There's, yes. No, I was gonna say I mean, we can start, well, a lot of it is in the definitions page of that deal on your matrix.
Yeah, that's.
I agree that we should have some sort of definition on stuff and we should have agriculture and stuff, but I mean, like we've agreed or we've talked about whatever, getting rid of certain things. Like the commercial equestrian, et cetera. I don't know if these things need to stay in just the definitions part of it and then take it out later, or if we take it out later, does it need to be in definitions? I don't know how that works. I don't know how that kind of goes back and forth, because if you start on one spot and you say, okay, we'll take it, get rid of this, you gotta get rid of it somewhere else as well. And it's like, does it need to be in certain spots and out in other spots? If somebody comes in and says, I'm gonna put in a commercial equestrian barn to you guys and say, hey, I wanna put this and this is what I'm gonna do. And you guys go, well, the definition of that is here, but because it's within agriculture, it doesn't have to be explained somewhere else. I'm just asking you, because here you have it in multiple.
Just remind, and Beck, when you ask that question, look at what we just voted on last time. Okay, look at that.
I understand,
Okay.
I understand, Virginia, but what he's saying is that we have four, he gave us this matrix to give us 4 options on what to do with these different,
Right.
am I understanding that
That's
correctly?
exactly right.
And so you have commercial equestrian operations and you have it on 2 documents. So it's like, do we take it out of one but leave it in another? Do we take that?
Well,
I'm just trying to make it the most efficient way we can do this.
That's right. In the special exception revisions that are going to the council on November 5th, we have struck the requirement for commercial equestrian operations to need a special exception. It's in there for me to do right now. But you're getting back, I think, to the point of In the agricultural residential district, we have specifically identified certain bona fide agricultural uses as permitted uses, and there are other uses that are bona fide ag that aren't in there at all. We haven't even mentioned them at all, so.
Do they need to be mentioned because they are legit? I don't want to go back into the bona fide and whatever, but if they're legit, do they need to be mentioned again? Or do they just fit within this all-encompassing umbrella of?
Of bona fide ag.
Okay, well, it was Howard and then John, but I'd like to say something for
Well,
Howard.
okay, I want that question answered. Do we need to add it as well? Or is it just because it's within that umbrella, we don't have to address it anymore?
Well.
And really the question to you guys is if somebody comes in and says, hey guys, this is what I want to do, because you guys have to address it a certain fashion, so I don't know what questions get asked to you guys on how we need to address these issues.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we would have the ability to list every potential bona fide ag use in the world in our district. So maybe the best way to cover it is just to have the term bona fide agriculture. And I think, Virginia, you wanted agriculture in there also.
Here was my question, and Howard, I know you're still up, and John, I know you're still up, but we're having, Becca's having discussed, what we discussed previously, and my concern was there is bona fide ag, okay, that people do for commercial reasons, and there are people who are not making money, who want agriculture. There's, I don't know if the proper term is subsistence farming, the right to farm, you have the right to farm on your land, to eat food, to produce for your family when the economy goes sour. You have right to have chickens, to raise eggs. That would be called hobbying and subsistence. That said, I want to make sure that is protected. Now these few sentences that everyone voted on, that 4-1, they're happy with it. It seemed to me like this was pretty inclusive. And this is like an umbrella.
It is.
It is an umbrella. So now we have this umbrella that Jim made a point of being very detailed about tonight when we started. And now Beck has a question. So we have this umbrella, and we have this package to go forward through. So the question, Beck, you're asking is, do we need to go through this package? Is that what you're asking?
How much can we completely get rid of because it fits within this agricultural umbrella? And I mean, the thing is that's why I have the issue with bona fide, because bona fide talks about this actual commercial endeavor on the property, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you've got cows, you're not selling cows because you're actually milking them and you're drinking the milk. That's agriculture. If you build a fence on your property to keep your cows in, and the property is not bona fide ag because it is just your cows, you don't, from what I understand, you don't have to have setbacks. You can put your fence right on the line.
No.
You have to have setbacks.
Okay, hold on. Let me interrupt. I know it's Howard and John and Beck Scott, but Mark would like to.
I want to make a recommendation to you and urge you to consider it this way. You know, it's my understanding that the whole ag issue was never identified as an issue by town council for you guys to review. You may remember it came up because we were discussing the AGO opinion. We wanted you to be aware of the impacts of the AGO opinion after we got it. We discussed definitions, of which you made many recommendations on those definitions. And certainly that's going to be a follow-through at some point as we report that to council. But what we've been going now about 20 minutes, and you see, it's like quicksand. You guys are starting to fall into the same issues we've talked about meeting after meeting after meeting.
Right.
And I think if you could channel to a point now where you make a recommendation to council, and the recommendation could be very similar to what Jim has outlined. You may decide you want to have ag out of the code. You've heard my opinion, you know I don't agree with that, but that's where you may want to go. You may want to say, council, we recommend that you guys take a look at the entire code, and whatever needs to remain or stay needs to go in Article 65, as Jim has indicated. You may indicate, look at the whole code, give it an overhaul. We're not saying what should be done. What I'm saying is, I think you need to manufacture a recommendation, if you will, that at least gives council some input as a committee what you think ought to happen to ag. as far as getting into all the details, this was a nice tube that I think Jim did a great job, and we would love to have it for staff purposes. You know, we've always talked about trying to do a white paper, and I mean, that's always been out there. But if we go into this, we won't finish, you'll be going on for another year, and you'll only be talking again.
Well, and my
Oh,
question
but
was
then
just,
they
how
won't have
can
roads
we?
and money for roads and all,
Let me just say one other thing. When we had an earlier meeting we had a hiatus with the roadways committee. And one of the things, I had talked to Tom Golson, who was the liaison from council to that committee. And one of the things we recommended this year was, we wanted to expand that committee to be an ag committee as well.
Right.
To put ag. I don't know if they were thrilled with it. I didn't seem to get a warm reception. But at some point in time, there may be a need to have somebody, I'm not saying we should have an ag board. I'm stopping there.
Oh, I said it.
But I
That's
mean,
a
that may be a
recommendation I think
recommendation you want to
tonight.
make. I mean, I think those are the kind of input that town council's gonna need to move forward.
Okay,
Let me finish on my deal. The only reason I ask that is there a way that we, and I don't know, and I'm asking you guys, does a lot of this stuff, because you made a matrix that really broke everything down into very specific deals, is that something that can be reduced to fit under that umbrella? It's a question I'm asking you guys, because you guys are the ones that deal with it. That was all it is, just instead of making it so specific, we can put it all in one, it fits within this umbrella. I don't know if that's the right way to go. I'm asking for your all's thoughts or advice.
Well, I think in terms of your specific question, the list of uses in the AR district, we have several uses listed that are bona fide ag uses. There are other bona fide ag uses that are not listed. Now, staff has struggled on several occasions when someone has come in and said, I want to do this in my bona fide ag. And then we say, well, you have your agricultural land classification. I don't, I want to do it. So then that puts us in a position of telling him,
You don't want to be in that
well,
position.
we don't want to be.
Out of that,
Okay,
that's the whole purpose of
Okay,
not.
all right.
I know, well, just listen to what I have to say. We have a good source now at the Agricultural Extension Service, okay? And she has been extremely helpful when uses like that come in that have not been built or developed yet. We will send it over to her, and she will give us an opinion as to whether or not that use will be bona fide ag if and when it's developed. So we can go back and tell the property owner on that basis that yes, it appears like your business, your operation is going to be bona fide ag. So what I'm saying on that basis, I think that we can have just a term that says bona fide ag in ULDC. And I think we can also have a term that says agriculture based on another couple of examples that we've had.
These are right, and we can recommend these
Yeah,
things
because
for future.
we had another thing come in where a guy wanted to put in a cornfield. And we called the property appraiser and mentioned it to him. And he said, well, we look at the characteristics of the industry. And looking at that piece of property, it's only a couple acres. It was his opinion that he would not call it bona fide ag, he would call it a garden. Okay, which is getting along the lines of what we're talking about. So if we have the two categories, agriculture and bona fide agriculture, in our AR district, that pretty much covers it, I
Okay.
think.
Can Howard
I'm done.
and then John. Howard?
Okay, it's a fine line between us doing what we wanted to do with the ULDC and allowing town management to manipulate you into doing what they wanted you to do. Okay, the moment you start asking for definitions, the moment you start wanting to list all the different types of agriculture, you're leaving it wide open for those that just happen not to be listed. Okay? All of this stuff has to be wiped out. There is no need for any definitions in this on anything that is not handled in the ULDC. So if we're going to take agriculture out of the ULDC and just have that blanket statement in there that we're an agricultural community, just like John composed, except for the last 5 words, then we are covered as far as Mark Cutney's threats that if we don't put something in like that, we're going to lose agricultural zoning. Okay? We're covered from that angle, and we're also wide open to allow anything that is, according to Florida statutes, allowed. But we're not closing the doors to anything that we forgot to mention or we forgot to list, or the definition we put in here isn't extensive enough, and well, now when I read this definition, it doesn't quite say that. Nowhere is the culture of growing hay mentioned anywhere. And I guarantee you there's a specific word for the culture, for culturing hay. But we all know it's agriculture if you're growing hay. So the way to be most protective, now I'm sure town staff will point out that definitions and regulations can protect, and yes they can, but in other ways they restrict. So the moment we start messing with putting any of these things in a special place in the ULDC, or having them put in a different ordinance, or having certain definitions or certain sections in there, then we are by nature limiting what people can do. And as Madam Chair pointed out, is if we make the choice to say bona fide rather than agriculture, then all of a sudden we're eliminating the possibility of someone who wants to grow corn or milk cows for their own purposes. So again, the statement we composed, that we voted on, that refers to Florida statutes, is all we need in the ULDC. And then we stop all this discussion, because if we start discussing, as Mark said, we're going into a quagmire here.
Is that not what I asked? Can we not just use that as an umbrella and not have it?
Exactly, and
That's
get rid
all I
of
asked.
all this stuff.
Great.
But they'll never, but my point back is, by the nature of how we have been, I'm using the word loosely, manipulated by staff over these months, okay, they're never going to give you an affirmative answer to that question. Because they don't want, and understandably, they don't want us to ever say that, well, we did that because staff said we could.
All right. You guys really need to read that whole memo I gave you. I really don't want our town staff making determinations. You're not getting paid, you're charging the town, you're calling the county supervisor, you're calling the county property appraiser, you're trying to act as a consultant to help somebody that comes in. And I think we've got to let them know that they got to stand on their own 2 feet if they want certain benefits. If they want to worry about what's my ag classification for tax purposes, you go to the tax appraiser or property appraiser. If you want to know whether you're covered by right to farm protections and you don't have to pay attention to building permits and fences, you go to the state statutes and the courts, and you go to people that can give you advice, but ultimately it's up to you. I mean, it is totally wrong for the town staff to be spending a lot of time trying to deal with people that have got creative ideas and are going to get in a situation where we're going to be not only criticized, but probably sued for detrimental reliance, or, you know, people that are going to take your opinions or your interpretations and spend money and then find that maybe they don't get the right property appraiser classification for tax exemption purposes, or, you know, and you don't need to be in that position. And, you know, I think it's hard to write a code that is an intelligent code without using the word agriculture or some of the other definitions that we've got in here. But you've almost got to put in bold type that general statement and just say, you know, when somebody asks you, you say, you know, this area is a complex area with a lot of state statutes, court precedents, and people away from us who make determinations that are going to affect your tax situation, that are gonna affect your code situation. And we can't give you specific advice because that's not necessarily gonna be what the property appraiser does or what somebody else does if they feel you've become a nuisance or you haven't complied with codes and, you know, you're taking advantage of a situation that they're not able to take advantage of.
Mark?
John, I agree with you in part. I don't think that's what we're doing. And I wouldn't want us to do that. We're not trying to act as anybody's consultant. It's incumbent upon us in working for government to be able, if you know the answer or you know the process to, if somebody comes in and doesn't, to guide them to go that way, but you stop there. What we've been talking about is there is a regulatory aspect to what we do. And whether you consider, Howard, regulation a bad word or not, the bottom line is we are here to protect the town from somebody who is trying to use the mantle of agriculture when they're not agriculture. We talked about it, a good case came up, commercial rodeo. I mean, that is our call as a regulator. If somebody's gonna come in and they're just gonna have some facilities on their property and they're not a rodeo, that's fine. But if they're trying to be a rodeo, that is not allowed. And those are the kind of calls we have to make from a regulatory standpoint. To say we shouldn't be involved with it is opening up the town to getting a use sometime that they're gonna be very sorry for. I mean, but I don't want to be a consultant to Mr. Smith who comes in the door and has no idea what he's supposed to do, and that's not my job to lead him totally, but if we do know the answer, or we can give him some guidance, we should do that, because when people come into government, they expect to get some information.
Well, I think if you refer him to the Agriculture Extension Service, or you refer him to the Property Appraiser's Office, the Agriculture Division,
That's what I'm
and if he wants to, you know, start looking at the intricacies of right to farm protections, you tell him that there's a lot of state statutes and definitions and areas that he's got to be sure that he can qualify for if he wants those benefits.
Right.
And just you stay out of it.
Now, by the same token, however, if somebody comes, Mr. Jones comes in, and Mr. Jones says, John, I want to do A, B, C, D, and E, and all of a sudden, all the components of A, B, C, D, and E, we're not sure what that is. Well, it's incumbent upon us to make a determination as to what we think it is for the purposes of regulating his use, or even determining if the use is appropriate to begin with. And we gave you concrete examples with the worm farm and some of these people who have come in where they weren't really ag, they were really recycling and things like that, trying to come in under it.
Well, I mean, tell him he's taking a
That was
risk.
the creative ideas term John used.
Yeah, he's taking a risk and, he's got to.
But it is incumbent, we can't duck that responsibility. We have the zoning responsibility. It is incumbent upon us to say, yes, this is permitted in town, or no, it's not.
Katie, any comments?
Does everyone here realize that when we fell under Palm Beach County's regulations for ag, bona fide ag, that we did have regulations that it regulated through animal care and control, that you couldn't have 40 pigs on half an acre. You couldn't have 25 horses on 1 acre. So having rules and regulations isn't always a bad thing. I don't think we have to govern people and make them feel like we're strangling them, but do you really want your neighbor next door on half an acre to have 500 pigs? Because if you take away all regulation, then that's what's going to happen. And we did, in Waxahachie Groves, have those rules. Whether you want to believe it or not, we did.
Yeah, but the point is, you can't have 500 pigs on 1 acre.
You absolutely can.
Without disease and problems where animal control would shut them down.
Okay, but they can do it, and then people have to complain, and
In
then...
all your years of living here, has anybody ever done that? When we were under Palm Beach County and they
I'm
were
just
sending
saying they
every
can
time
do it
they
if you
carry
don't
out
have a
here to do whatever they
regulation.
wanted. Did any
If
of
you
these
don't
things
have
happen?
a regulation, they can do it. Yes, and I've seen fields out here where people throw, 30 horses on 2 acres, and it's terrible. The horses are neglected, it's a field of dirt, they're starved, and you have to call animal care and control to get them out there. And if you had a regulation to stop that from happening, it wouldn't happen.
You still have it. Palm Beach County Animal Care Control still governs Waxahachie Groves.
I understand that.
Okay.
But if we had a regulation to stop that
But Palm
from
Beach County
happening.
Animal Care Control already has
You
it.
would have to call Palm Beach County.
Right, or we could call our town.
Well, and I think that's kind of what we need to come up with. Again, we have this umbrella statement. We're here as a review committee.
Right.
And it's something you need to decide tonight what motion you're going to make. You've made an umbrella statement. We have the starting statement here. What, Jim? Oh, we've got comments tonight, folks. Line up. Okay, look what you've done. All right. We have the umbrella statement. We're happy with making that. We've made the motion on that. What they're asking us tonight is what we would like to recommend to the town.
Does the town need, does the town need definitions on a lot of these things, or is the umbrella statement enough? That was the crux of my question that started this whole discussion.
I think you do need definitions, but as we've discussed ad nauseam, we would follow the state definitions.
You got to qualify.
We have
So
the
this-
information, it's not like we're.
This umbrella definition could cover a lot of this major.
Let's take some public comments and then try and wrap this up.
Please.
Yes. Okay, who was first here? Todd? Well, who's going to be the shortest? I guess Todd?
I think so.
Yes, come on, Todd.
All right, I agree about the, too many pigs on an acre and horses on an acre. And Palm Beach County Animal Care and Control still regulates that type of thing in Loxahatchee Groves. There's no sense in duplicating it and having our town staff have to have rules and regulations and spend the money to enforce those, when all we gotta do is pick up the phone and call Animal Care and Control. Why spend the extra money here if they're already doing it? Let them spend the money to enforce those codes. So there's almost no reason to duplicate it here. It's almost like saying we're having a code here that makes outlawing certain religious groups or whatever. Well, you can't do that because federal government says you can't do that. So why are we going to say you can have all religions here? There's no reason to do that because it's already handled at the federal level.
Can I just ask you a question?
Sure.
Why are you against having that here?
Because there's no-
If it is already regulated with animal care and control, why would you be against it being regulated here? Just so they coincide with one another?
Why duplicate it?
Why not? Why not?
Because then they have to spend the extra money and time to enforce those regulations. Where why should
But
we?
they're already redoing everything anyway, and then you would have a regulations.
But why are we spending the money to regulate it when it's already regulated and paid for by Palm Beach County? You're duplicating.
All right, that's your point.
You have
Your tax dollars, so he's saying your tax dollars.
Exactly, you're paying for it here, why are we gonna duplicate it and pay for it here? You're already paying for it there.
Right,
Okay.
you have a town regulation that
Right.
people would have to follow.
All right, it's a
No,
toss. Are you more, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Can I make a comment related to
Yes,
that?
go ahead, please.
I think that if we get into the details of how many pigs per acre and that sort of thing, that does put an enforcement burden that's uneconomic and duplicative. I think the general statement is correct, and I think beyond that, if we're dealing with nuisance items like sanitation and noise that apply to everybody, no matter whether they've got one animal or 10 animals, or they're operating some kind of a business that generates noise as opposed to, a silent activity. I think that if you've got a general nuisance and sanitation and public health and safety statutes that are in the code, and you've got this overall statement that says we can't duplicate what animal care and control do and what the state statutes and court precedents say, I think that's the approach that is easier for us to explain and live with.
Okay, right,
I have a little bit more. 2 minutes.
all right, let's
One-
get
1
this,
minute.
you've gone an hour on this.
Five months ago, you guys almost unanimously voted to remove agriculture, and it got tabled, and it got hashed around, and it came down to because you needed that blanket statement, which you guys have now approved, that blanket statement. So now you guys should go back to that original, unless something's changed, and go back to that original vote where all 5 of you agreed, vote on it, and then put it to rest. That way you guys can stop discussing agriculture.
Which is why I voted with the one vote. You know why? You recall, that's why I didn't want to get into it. That's why I voted against what we were doing. But, okay, let's see, it's a toss-up here. Let's keep it short. Larry, I'm going to bring you up because Nina's got charts, right? Is that for us tonight, charts?
Yeah, but.
Okay. Larry?
Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in and just agree with what Katie was saying about having no regulation whatsoever. I'm not exactly sure what the right thing to do here is, but I do know that I want to be protected from certain things because I have been subject to that, and it has been a nightmare, okay? Now, Mr. Voren, I really respect his service on this committee. He's a very smart, very articulate man. But he is also a representative for the agriculture industry, and a lot of the things he's recommended in this town have had absolutely no regard for anybody else except his agriculture industry. And I mentioned last week, Mr. Bourne and Mr. McClendon tried to do exactly the same thing at the Palm Beach County Agriculture Committee meetings a few years ago. I gave you that document. Tried to remove all the agriculture, or a tremendous amount of the agricultural wording from the Palm Beach County ULDC, and they're doing exactly the same thing here. So, again, I am not exactly sure what is the right thing to do here, but I have to say, I want people to understand where they're coming from when they make these very, very strong statements. They're coming from one particular perspective. There's a lot of other people in this town coming from a very different perspective, okay? Whether they're agriculture or residential, it really doesn't matter. Because some of these things that will affect other people, they will affect them whether they're agriculture or residential.
Okay, 30 seconds, you promised, and then John.
The problem, Katie, is, as Mayor Browning said, people that have bona fide ag shouldn't have advantages that people don't have bona fide ag. You shouldn't force a regular guy to make a bona fide ag commercial operation just to have extra cows or chickens or pigs.
Of course
Now,
not.
if you are bona fide agriculture, the town loses its right to tell you how many chickens you can have on an acre, how many cows you can have on an acre, and how many pigs. Then it falls under animal cruelty, animal control, public health, and all of that. And as long as those bases are covered, the town loses control over telling you how many to have. So why should she be forced to go ahead?
I don't think she should
Have
be
bona
forced.
fide
I
ag.
think if
That's-
the rules were the same as they were when it was Palm Beach County, I have no problem
That
with
doesn't
that.
say Palm Beach County was legal on everything they did either.
I didn't say they were legal,
Alright.
Howard. I said that the rules
Okay.
should be the same.
All right,
Yeah,
John.
I think, I understand Larry's concerns, but that's why I was saying that other than the general statement that says you've got laws and court cases and other public entities, whether it's the property appraiser or the animal care and control, you also have the town's right to have nuisance and public health and safety requirements that apply to everybody. And I think that rather than getting into how many pigs, how many cows, how many birds, that sort of thing, I think that if you have the overall protective statutes that are reasonable, noise, sanitation, public health and safety, in addition to the references that we've talked about, I think you're going to have a practical way to protect people that, just like it's almost impossible to write a perfect contract, it's almost impossible to write a perfect set of regulations that are going to be enforceable with any degree of economic reality.
Right. We just need to identify the regulatory agencies out there and know they exist. And as you said, set guidelines. Here are the guidelines. Here are the people they can go to advise you on this ag issue. Seek them out, and then perhaps if there is an issue, someone,
And we can have nuisances and sanitation and public health and safety.
well, based on the regulatory agencies, you have to, again, respect the agencies that are involved in that. That's why I'm asking Mark to review that information. Yes, Jim. And Nina, you'll be next. And then we're wrapping this up.
Yeah, I just have one quick section to cite in this handout, and I won't say anything the rest of the night on agriculture.
Which handout?
It's on page handwritten 57 of the
What you gave us?
yeah.
Page 57.
And this is a page out of the land clearing, the town's land clearing
Oh,
ordinance.
please. That is a hot
Oh,
button.
okay, let me just read this. It says, initial clearing of a parcel not previously used for agriculture is not an exempt activity. That tells me that if a guy wants to come in and he says he's going to do a nursery, but it's vacant land and it is not developed and does not have a bona fide ag classification, he's not exempt from the land clearing ordinance. So that's a reference to agriculture. Should we strike that?
I got an answer to that.
Go ahead, John, real quick.
I think that the initial clearing is at his risk. If he's really capable of putting in a nursery operation that becomes bona fide ag, he's satisfied his risk. Now, under the section that we're dealing with here, this 87, the tree preservation and so on, we've got the right to say, you know, look, you're taking the risk in clearing all this stuff. We have the right to require a bond to restore it if you decide to walk away, or you know, decide that, you know, when you really get into the details of running this agriculture operation, you decide you don't want to do it. You know, you're not going to leave the town in a lurch. But I don't think this wording, initial clearing, is inconsistent with Section 87 to protect the town and its canopy and its vegetation.
I'm not talking about how we're going to implement it. I'm just saying that if we pass a motion tonight that says we strike every reference to agriculture, this comes out. And there's certain things in here that should not come out.
Right.
Okay,
I
it's
don't
valid point,
That's all I'm
okay,
saying.
let me just say, so we have our umbrella, we're just making a recommendation, we have our umbrella statement, we've made, you can go through there, some, you know, make a recommendation. This does, it refers to agriculture, and perhaps there's a way we can recommend that we have the umbrella statement that refers to the activity of agriculture, as John pointed out. There's other things, you know, it's a land clearing issue. It could involve something else that could be other than agriculture. You know, instead, you know, if there's other, it's not agricultural specific. Maybe that's what we have to say. Maybe that's what we need to identify. Things that can, issues that are not just agricultural specific. They can involve agriculture, but they're not agriculture specific.
It doesn't involve agriculture. It's a land clearing issue that mentions
That may
clearing
or
for
may
that
not
purpose.
involve
So
agriculture.
that could be,
Can
let
we,
Okay, but there's a way to,
can we have Nina do her?
yes,
what she
let's
wants
have
to say?
Nina, and then when we're through, okay, Nina?
Nina Corning, E-Road. Just to say pro-ag and not anything to do with birds. I don't think this is a bird issue, and I think personal vendetta should stay out of this, period. When it comes to this particular issue with clearing, I think we're talking about what comes first, the chicken or the egg. That person does not have bona fide ag yet, right? Correct?
That's true, but it's, bona fide ag is mentioned in that paragraph. It says, these activities, bona fide ag activities, if they haven't started yet, are still subject to this paragraph. And that's all I'm saying is that we can't necessarily strike the word agriculture every time it's in the code.
And so we're not,
And that's all I'm saying.
we're not asking, so perhaps we're not saying that the word agricultural must come out of the ULDCs. We have our umbrella statement, and then we're not saying strike every reference
every word.
that, you know, that the word agriculture cannot appear, because it can have a
That's all
positive.
I'm
And I
saying.
think,
Because to protect the town, you can not only, under the way the code is already written, you can require a bond to replace the vegetation, or you can require a land use covenant that would keep somebody from cutting everything out, all the natural vegetation, and then saying, well, now I've got a clear piece of land. Well, no, you can't sell it as a clear piece of land if you did that clearing based on having a bona fide ag activity, and you decide to walk away from it and just want to sell some cleared land for a better price.
okay, Nina, finish up.
Yeah, if we can, you know, if we can remember not to dual regulate, I think that's what kind of got us into the trouble and the hot spot in the first place. And I think you guys were all on the right track by identifying, you know, that Florida statute's there to regulate bona fide ag, and you can start out with that and make it a little less complicated and not get so fearful of, I don't know, 200 pigs on an acre. I mean, the county has had its problems, you know, with the acreage, and I stepped through all of that, and it was a real mess. So I think that even Keith Harris, if you speak to him, he had his issues where, actually animal control had issues with him having, somebody's
More than 3 horses.
more than 3 horses. So let's simplify it. Let's go back to saying we recognize bona fide ag. We understand there are certain regulations. Let's not put management into position of spending additional monies, of telling them what to do and how to do things, and then kind of go step by step. Even with the rodeo that's mentioned, that to me is eventing. And when I brought it up in front of P&Z, they took it as eventing, not ag activity. So, the cornfield is a perfect one. The cornfield, the one person you call up may think, oh, that's just a garden. And yet the other person that's going to hand out, when that committee comes together and gives that bona fide exemption or not, might decide something different than that person that Jim may be calling. So, you need to go and recognize that certain statutes are there, that certain things are protected, and then move down from there.
Okay,
And
so
not get too caught up in it.
So what I've heard tonight, and Howard, I don't need to say, make a quick comment, and then
I'm
I'll
going to make a motion.
Oh, well, what I'd like to say is, what I've heard, we have an umbrella statement we're happy with. I've also heard that we would like the agencies and regulatory agencies and the, God forbid, the offices, I'll say, that regulate in the county who have jurisdiction. Is that correct, Howard? I don't want to oversay it, but allow the agencies who have power to regulate the industries and not provide duplication. We don't want to waste our taxpayers' money here. Is there anything else?
Nuisances.
Then that's where I've asked, and I'm going to ask for that to be put on the agenda, that we are discussing agriculture, and we can have that issue brought up at the next one. That can be a separate
Should
issue.
be limited to that area.
Yeah, I just want a review of that topic, but review it based on the agencies, John, and that would cover everything. So if you want to make a motion, Howard?
Okay, I'm going to formulate it as I speak. So I make a motion that all references to agriculture in the ULDC that either regulate or define be removed. The blanket statement will be included, as well as the reference to agriculture in regards to land clearing will also be included.
Will be retained.
Retained.
Can you repeat that, what he said?
Yes, I'll try to my best. My shorthand. Mr. Board moved that all references to the ag and the ULDC that either regulate or define be removed, that the blanket statement that was approved in section 5F of that section 05, whatever, be included, and that the ag reference as it relates to land clearing be included.
Be retained.
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 I think that, could I comment?
Yes.
We can tweak that.
Yeah,
It's a
I'd like to.
recommendation.
We should get back, let's get a second.
Wait, before we should get a second before
Yeah,
we
so you can
comment?
discuss it.
I'll second for discussion. But
You made a second?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would like to bring in the areas that you addressed and that I addressed as a supplement to yours, that we're not taking out and just leaving a blank slate. What we're saying is, we've got the general statement, and then we'll have the references to the proper county authorities, I guess, for property.
Regulatory authorities.
Proper regulatory authorities.
Regulatory authorities.
Federal, state, or county.
Yes, state or county. And that, over and above that, the town has nuisance statutes that protect against unreasonable noise or odors or sounds, I think that you need the combination of those three things, the general deferral to the state and courts, the references to the county or state regulatory agencies, because, water's gonna get involved at some point. And then.
Talked about not duplicating stuff.
The
This is
town's,
already duplicated.
the town's right for this. No, we're referring to them. We're just saying that these are controlling, they're gonna be controlling. You're not gonna have an operation in Waxahachie Groves where you're not gonna be subject to animal care and control.
Of course.
And
So,
you're not gonna have an
is
operation.
it necessary to put it back in there again?
Well, what we're saying is, this is how we're dealing with agriculture here. We're recognizing how this town relates to agriculture in the state of Florida and under all of the issues that anybody that wants to do ag here has to deal with.
What about if we amend the blanket statement to say not only state statutes and court precedents, but we put in there Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and Animal Control
In that state?
in that statement?
Isn't that state?
Yeah, why don't we?
That is
just
state.
You don't need
It's
to
covered.
That's right, you're right.
It's
already
covered.
Okay.
That's what I said, it's an umbrella. It covers
Exactly.
everything. And you guys, well,
Right.
and
They-
if the spotted
No, you're right.
woodpecker goes through there and.
Okay,
it-
all right.
It's covered.
You're right. All of that stuff is covered. That's all state statutes
The only thing that's not,
and court precedents.
I mean, you can go back to the state constitution and that protects people against certain noise nuisance. But,
What we just had, that's just, and refer to the state and regulatory.
well, except that the town can establish, certain nuisance levels that it has a basis
That
for
they-
adopting.
The ones that they can legally
As long as it's
establish,
broad-based.
as long as it's,
As
le-
long as
as
it
long as
applies
they
to
have the
everybody.
legal
Right,
authority
so
to
that-
do so.
But that's what I'm saying,
Yes,
those
as long
three
as they
things.
have the legal authority to do so.
I think the general statement, the reference to the other county or state authorities, and the right of the town to establish defensible nuisance regulations. I
That they
think
can
that's-
legally do so.
That they can legally do so. I think that lets this town relate correctly to the rest of the world.
Can I hear the motion?
Because we're gonna have a motion here and everything else we're moving on, and it's not gonna take this long.
Okay, let's go back to the original motion that Howard made and what we've added to that motion, and I'm gonna add what we've added. So the original motion was move that all references to ag in the ULDC that either regulate or define be removed, and the blanket statement as respect to section F of section 05, whatever, that be included, and that the ag reference in the land clearing section identified by Jim Fleshman be retained. And then we added that to include the regulatory agencies of Palm Beach County and the state, and the right of the town to establish nuisance statutes if they can legally do so, be included.
Can we add a partridge in a pear tree as well?
Is that about right?
That's about right.
That's about.
I think
that's
you
fine.
guys did it, congratulations.
Do we- So you reaffirm your second without further?
Yeah.
I make a motion
All
to
those
accept
in-
as read.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
How about all of those
Wait, they didn't say
again?
aye. All those against?
Nay. It's too
Oh.
goddamn complicated.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm
It
sorry.
just like it goes on and on and on.
Okay.
But we're not deciding that,
Okay.
we're turning it over to
Yeah,
the
it's not,
town
you can go
council.
to the town council, that,
And you can speak against it.
4-1.
Right.
If we did our constitution that way, it'd be like
Neither one,
four.
we didn't say aye. It was two.
Oh, okay,
You voted no,
okay.
right? Yeah, 3-2.
Thank you, it was just overwhelming here. 3-2.
Because I totally disagree with this whole land clearing deal.
Well, I'm assuming you voted with the motion in second, so that can hear.
I voted with Howard and
Okay.
John and Kate and Beck opposed. I apologize.
I like a lot of it, I just think it needs to be.
Too
And again, we're just recommending,
That's
and you
fine.
have the
Our
option,
recommendation.
you have the option to go before town council. This is not
Next,
yet.
let's go to the next thing.
And we also.
We're done, we voted, go to the next thing.
Okay, but
Please.
you were also supposed to, future, you can go to town council,
That's
recommend
fine,
an
we got
ag
it,
committee.
go to the next thing.
Oh, finally, look at them go now. Okay, item 2.
That's the pain management clinics, Madam Chair, and I had a chance to take a look at Royal Palm. Royal Palm's ordinance doesn't address the issue as the committee has recommended, and I think you guys talked about actually allowing it as an accessory to a pain management clinic or, or clinic. But I think that's still workable. I would need to take a look at other ordinances, but I would say at this point in time, you don't need to do anything else. I think the motion you made in previous meetings is workable. We'll just report that to council, and unless you,
I think the other towns have put a great deal of time into what they've
I
done.
think we'll be able to fashion an ordinance that works.
We're not gonna pay you, we don't want you running up the bill on this. Are you guys happy with this one?
I make a motion to go on with that,
Yep.
to follow what other towns do.
Oh, well, wait a minute, I thought our motion goes back to Howard's motion, which was a pretty simple motion.
On the pain clinics, did you have a motion on the pain?
Yeah,
Yes,
they
he
they
made
only
it.
be allowed as a full-service medical facility.
Right, and this was just simply enough, we asked them to update us, they got us some info, we continue with Howard's motion, we don't need
Do
to
we
make
need
a
to vote on that,
motion.
or we don't do
No.
that?
I don't need to do anything.
He's just updating us, so we can move on to non-conforming
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Okay, item 3.3, non-conforming issues.
Okay, this is a fairly complicated issue, and it also gets into the issue of the historical legacy.
Yes, sir. And future non-conforming issues.
Yeah, that's right, and because of,
Thanks to
because of the
Waxahachie
fact,
Road Water Control District and the town.
because of the fact that it's a little complicated, I actually attempted to make the recommended code revisions to make it a little clearer. There's a fairly innocent-looking sentence in section 75-10 that
Yeah, the last sentence is
has really created a lot of problems for property owners in town. You're probably all aware that the minimum lot size in the town's zoning code is 5 acres. If you look at an inventory of the lots in the town, 46% of the lots in the town are less than 5 acres.
What percentage
We have maps. We have maps.
are less than 5 acres?
Yeah, so.
Now, can I ask you a real quick question on that less than 5 acres? Does that include like 4.9 acres because the road took this and stuff like that?
It does, but there's 3.6% of the lots in town are between 3 and 4.9. So if we take those out of it, we have 42% are less than 3 acres.
Or less than, okay.
The roads don't take any land for this purpose.
No, I know, but there's like some weird properties that are like 4.98 or something.
Along with Okeechobee.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So on the face of it, we have at least 40% of the lots in the town, almost 45% are non-conforming lots. Now, the way the code currently reads is that if a lot in the town was legal and conforming, according to the Palm Beach County Code, at the time of the corporation, it is legal and non-conforming now. That sounds simple enough, but you go back to how you determine legal and non-conforming under the county's code. A property owner has to either prove that his lot was subdivided after 1992 and before 1996, or by chain of title search that it was created before 1972. And that can be a very, very expensive proposition.
Why? Why is that? I mean, where does that requirement come from with those dates?
That's in the county code.
Oh,
And it says here that if the lots were legal and conforming for the county code, we're going to consider them legal. And it's up to the property owner to go back and prove under the county's code that one of those two circumstances existed on the property, which which is a real burden, especially since we have a high percentage of our lots that are less than 5 acres.
Let me ask you this question. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, and I'm not looking for a big debate or discussion. It's just a general question. We have an issue of, there will be easements. I've heard different comments from Mark over the past year on how this may or may not affect non-conforming. When there's a road issue, and if easement is given up or assigned to the town, will that make more lots non-conforming? Because if you're at 46%, no.
No.
That's why I just want to confirm through Jim, though, it's just,
Well, no, there's a section in the code now that says that
because,
if your lot becomes non-conforming as a result of the loss of right-of-way.
see, that's,
you
so
can-
it will be
you can-
non-conforming.
No, you can still count that loss of right-of-way.
You
Okay.
retain that as part of
Yes.
your.
Right.
Right,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
so
That's
technically,
right. If you gave up a 1/10 of an acre on a 5-acre lot, making your lot 4.9 acres,
okay,
you can still count that 1/10.
all right. And you won't say, and then you will not increase, the town will not say, now we have
Yeah.
100%. Now, you will not say we have 100% non-conforming.
No, but
We're on video.
what I'm suggesting
That's not logical.
that the procedure that the county has in place now is potentially extremely burdensome on property owners that have small lots. What I'm suggesting is that procedure be replaced by the following. I got with the county planning division, and I got a list of the lots that existed per the property appraiser on January 1st, 2005, which was the year before the town was created. And my suggestion is that if you have a lot that was a lot of record on that list as of that time, you're a legal non-conforming lot.
You're illegal and
So
non-conforming.
all we would have to do is check that list of lots. And if your lot, it was on that list as of 2005, by definition, you'll be a legal non-conforming lot.
And the point of time is the reference to the incorporation of the town.
Yeah, yeah, so that it makes it a much simpler process. All somebody has to do is stop by the town office, pull up the list. If your lot was on the list, you're good to go. And that,
Do they have to show up to do that? Why can't it just be automatic?
well, yeah, I mean, I'm just saying if you have a question about it.
Okay.
So as a reference,
You-
but
you could
instead of
call-
the expensive process,
You
they
can call up and
simplify.
say, here's my parcel control number, am I on your list? And we say,
Just to make sure, yes.
yes, you're good.
That means they're legal, non-conforming.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And that's one of the major suggestions that I have in here is that we need to separate lots from non-conforming uses and non-conforming structures. We have to deal with non-conforming lots separately, and hopefully according to the way that I'm recommending. Now, non-conforming structures that had approvals by the county, documented approvals, then can become legal non-conforming uses or legal non-conforming structures.
Let me just say one quick thing of reaction. When you're talking about the legal non-conforming lots, I sat in on all of the meetings, in corporations and so on, and that issue of the complexity of the county records, I don't believe ever came up.
Yeah, well, it probably didn't, because it's sort of buried in this one sentence. It essentially says.
What page is that sentence, so everyone can be on the same page?
It's on page 1, section 75-01.
Which is our page 16.
16.
Oh,
Okay, page 16, 75,
010.
okay.
If you read the first sentence.
Notwithstanding other, right here, we're on page 16. Okay, and we here.
Yeah.
Okay, hold
Lots.
on, no, wait a minute, his is a little bit, why is yours
I have no idea.
different? Here, yeah, here.
No.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
Notwithstanding other provisions contained in this article, all uses and structures and plots of land that were legal and conforming to the Palm Beach County ULDC as of October 1st, 2006, shall be deemed legal and conforming. Now, that says it's legal and conforming according to the Palm Beach County Code. Now, the Palm Beach County Code is where it gets into that very difficult, expensive process.
Yeah,
Okay? And that probably wasn't picked up because that's a very, that seems like it's a simple sentence and a simple procedure, but it wasn't pointed out how difficult that procedure is.
So what is your suggestion?
My suggestion is, if it's on that list of lots that we now have, that existed for the property appraiser on January 1st, 2005, the year before incorporation, that by definition is a legal conforming lot. That's what we have to do.
So you're not going to be changing this verbiage, you're just saying how we're
He's gonna over, right.
Well, this also has to do with uses, not just lots.
Oh.
Right, and I have
Okay.
some questions on page 20 when I get there.
I have a lot of questions about
Yes.
this document.
Yeah, but what the changes that I've made to the document is I've taken out lots out of this first section here. So it's notwithstanding other proportions contained in this article, all uses and structures that were legal and conforming to the code are legal and conforming.
because you're saying separately. you're
Lots
gonna-
are handled in different
Lots are
sections.
separately.
Okay.
List, yeah.
Okay. I want to make a comment here, and one of the things we were asked to do was to make the ULDC more simple. I was a firm believer that it should also be readable by the average person and understandable. And I happen to be personally uncomfortable with the use of the word notwithstanding. It's meant to mean despite, and I don't know what lawyer invented that word, but it certainly wasn't an average person, and I was wondering, would it make more sense and make this document more readable to the average person if we substituted the word despite wherever the word notwithstanding means? Because that twists my brain, maybe that's just my psyche.
Well, to tell you the truth, I struggled with that myself, trying to figure out exactly what it meant.
It's supposed to mean despite. And I make a motion that we change the word notwithstanding to despite, because that is the true desire for that word, to what it means. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now, I mentioned this property appraiser's list that.
Hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on the word.
I agree.
I agree.
We have a second?
I second
Yeah,
it.
seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? 5-0, motion passes.
And that's anywhere it appears. I mean, it's a crazy word.
I agree.
Although I would have hoped other provisions would have been removed, but
Well,
anyway, I know, just as a
Chip away a little bit at a
Okay,
time.
thank you, Howard, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, under section 75-015, I've added one more clause, I guess, to make it a little more clear. The second sentence that starts, town staff may make use of.
Okay, at the end of the paragraph,
Town
Wait.
staff, yeah, 75-015.
right, okay.
And where in that?
The second
Removing council and inserting staff.
No, second sentence that starts, town staff may make use of.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm suggesting that we put in data at its disposal, and that data will be the list of.
I have apologize, I am lost. Where
It's the last sentence on page 16 of 17.
It's not highlighted.
Okay, I see, all right.
Yeah, that's right. I have a different version, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay, I was reading in the yellow, I was looking at the yellow.
Yeah, he's adding that.
Oh,
Make use of data at its disposal.
Okay. Well, that reads, it seems to read clearer the way you did it,
Yeah, I mean, that just gives
clarity.
gives the staff the ability to use whatever information it has to make that determination. And that information is going to be that list of 1975.
So you're taking out affidavits and investigation as necessary?
Well, you're also changing the title,
Yeah.
which is something I had noted here that
In section
you changed,
7.
yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
he
this
changed
is what I
it
wrote
to
in that plan.
determination of illegal nonconformity.
Right, rather than determination of nonconformity.
Yeah.
It was the wrong title.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because
Took your-
because the way the entire ordinance is set up now, it's up to a property owner to determine if he's non-conforming. Now, why would somebody do that? He would want to determine, is he conforming? So I changed it in my mind to make a little bit more sense.
I'm not doing it right now, I'm not going to tell her
We don't want to leave with our shins.
Okay, the next major part is 75-035, and that's uses as of October 2006.
Oh, geez.
And that gets into the issue of the legacy businesses, legacy uses, land uses. And the way it's worded now was that these uses that are not permitted under the town's zoning districts could become permitted as long as a property owner came to the town and got special exception approval within 6 months of the adoption of the code. So that gave the property owners 6 months to become a.
Which you
permitted
also
use.
said many people did not know about.
Well, I think almost nobody did.
Right.
So we're changing that to require,
Same word.
to state that they can still come and apply under the Category B special exception, which is the simplest special exception, and if you remember, those are administrative special exceptions that can be granted by the town staff. And also, we included several of the recommendations that Howard had in your initial proposal to deal with historical legacy businesses. That the businesses or uses, I mean, they have to be operated on a property with homestead exemption, and that the operator also has to be the resident of the homesteaded property. The use does not present a threat to public health or safety. There's no history of town code violations. And finally, the owner-operator has submitted an affidavit certifying that he complies with the previous requirements, and that the continued operation of the business is limited to the exact physical address that it's currently at, and has to be at a minimum by a direct relative of the person owning the business. And that he also agrees to maintain a business tax receipt.
I have a question, and then John, and then Becky. Okay, Becky, did you, okay, Howard. My question, just real quick, looking at this on E, property has no history of town code violations. I mean, I know of multiple towns, with historic properties that have had code violations, bring them back up, you know, things happen, times change. So I'm just wondering, the use that has no history of town code violations, I would think that leaps out at me, and maybe it's something that, you know, if it has had a history of town code violations, must be brought into compliance or found to be, you know, legal. You know, just because somebody's, you know, been a bad person or had an issue with their property, I don't think that, hey, you know, shame on you. That one leaps out at me.
Okay, well,
And that one, my recommendation would be that it has, property must have, if previous violations must be brought into compliance or found to be illegal, you know, must be brought into compliance.
okay, I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, we know.
Were you open?
Yeah,
How do you think those building departments make their money, Jim? You know,
okay.
John, and then Howard?
The one thing that I thought we also had in the background of historical legacy businesses was that to the extent that they're not businesses that we really are looking at as conforming businesses for the future, we were going to basically say that they could not sell the business as a continuing business. And that
It was for their purpose.
it was for their use. They
Existence.
couldn't transfer the ownership or sell the property.
But to a family, I thought we said to a
Well,
family
relatively
member they
agreed
could.
on that was okay. If
Yeah, I
your
thought
son
we
wanted
said
to take
that.
over or something like that,
Okay.
I thought we had that
Yeah, we
discussion.
did.
Direct family.
Yeah, correct.
But they couldn't sell it, or they, you know, and have it remain an approved business, so
Yeah,
to speak.
yeah, we tried to address that in subsection C, and maybe that needs to be a little bit stronger worded.
The use shall be owned and operated on the property which is subject to a home splitting. That doesn't say that.
You know, in the name of the use operator, period.
Say that again, John?
Oh, okay. In the name of the use operator or his or her direct relative.
Right, 'cause there's some big discussion about that.
Say beyond that, in the event of a sale, the use will not be considered conforming.
In the event of a sale to a
Howard, can you
non-family
elaborate on what
member?
you said?
Pardon?
Howard was up next, I'm just wondering if I can elaborate on that.
no, elaborate. I just want to say one quick thing, if I'm making a discussion. I'm disappointed, Jim, you didn't find the missing word.
Oh, yeah.
I've been waiting for 6 months to bring this up in the first sentence. But may be allowed to continue to exist. So go ahead.
I would like for it to be added that not to diversify or to further extend the business from what it exists at.
Right,
How-
okay,
that's
that's a
at that
good,
point.
that's what you were, I think you
I mean,
kind of,
if they sell bowling balls right now, tomorrow they can't sell alcohol.
As of what point? As of incorporation, or as of when they get the approval? So they-
October 1st, 2006.
Okay,
existing, we're talking about,
They can do that
Okay.
before.
good.
And on F, I'm sorry, on G, it says the owner operator has undergone an inspection by the time to determine compliance with sections A through E. Shouldn't it be A through F?
Well, A through F is an affidavit.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Well, and
If that's on
does-
file, then, I suppose we could put it in.
well, it's part of your
And should it be
inspection
part of
and
the inspection
review
by the
the
town?
affidavit.
To make sure that it covers A through F?
Yeah, because they have to submit the affidavit, part of your
Yeah.
inspection is
And
confirming.
make sure that they
receipt.
have an active business tax receipt and all that stuff.
Receipt of the document.
Inspection and review.
They
Right, so A
stamp
through
it.
F, not just A through E.
Okay,
Inspection and review of A through F.
okay.
Sounds like Beck's paperwork, man, huh?
All right,
Okay, back now.
Let's go back to what you're adding on C. And, you know, that's where, in the event of a sale, it doesn't apply, or in the event of diversifying from the activities conducted.
You want to elaborate, add there, right back to C?
Yeah, I would just put, I mean, I agree with what John is saying, is that it, I mean, if it, to me, I think it says that if it stays within a direct relative, related by blood or marriage, kind of covers that. But I would add, that he had said, Les, that it can't be sold to somebody else.
Right, in the event of a sale or transfer to a non-family member, and then you were adding, or a diversification.
Well, even within the
Will be
existing
null
people,
and
yeah, they cannot diversify into anything else. In other words, they can't sell anything else.
If they
because that's
transfer
what
the
they've been-
title, the new person can't.
Where is that?
It's null and void,
No, I
it's
think
the
it's a
transaction.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I mean, even the existing people cannot change what they're selling right now.
Okay, I would suggest, you mentioned that it can't be diversified over, or expanded over and above what it was in '06, but I don't think we're gonna be able to know that. I think they shouldn't have to be able to expand it over and above when they get the special exception. The special exception will identify what the business is, and it can't be expanded over and above that.
I understand, but you put in here, certain uses that were in existence as of October 1st, 2006.
But he's just
But
going
we
with what
don't
you
know the
wrote.
extent. I mean, you're saying, you know, maybe they made 100 bowling balls and now they make 1,000.
No, I said diversify.
Diversify and expand, you said.
Well, I didn't mean expand as in selling more, but diversify or to change what they're doing now into
Okay.
something else.
Okay.
So I mean, if they were selling bowling balls in 2006, they can't all of a sudden sell,
Change their business.
change the business to something else. It has to stay with what they were doing. Yeah. Expand on, I mean, if they grow, that's fine, just can't go into something else. Or they can't add more to what they were doing.
Not diversify or change business activity beyond that.
Of what was in existence by, 06.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, I just want to make sure we covered E, that if there is a history of town code violations, they must be brought into compliance.
I got a quick comment too.
Well, you fill out a card again too. Need it?
Multiple?
Pardon?
We have to do multiple cards? All right.
Yeah, you
I'll
do,
that.
Nina.
All right.
Nina Corning?
Just wanted to point out that I do need to speak in the later section also in brief. But I wanted to point out that you had, in the non-conforming plots, you had still left over, that the setbacks that were reduced by 50%. I'm going to speak later in a later section regarding the current setbacks and how cumbersome they are.
What page is that on, please?
On page 3, I don't know how you're going to
What,
vote.
page
so
3?
you should be
Okay.
right.
And we totally ignored it?
Sorry, page 18 of 107.
Yeah.
Right, page 18,
Yeah, I'm
and
gonna
we,
cover that separately because
okay,
there's
so you're gonna go
a
back?
real inconsistency.
Okay,
between
Then
that.
I'm fine to go back also. Thank you.
Okay, okay,
Because
Todd?
I want to go back.
All right, Todd McClendon, D Road?
To go back to the, to expansion of the business, let's say during incorporation, you only made bowling balls and you only made 10 per week. And now you've expanded and you're doing 1,000 per week or 10,000 per week. Now you can come down and get approval is what you're saying, as long as you don't change from bowling balls to bowling pins.
Right.
So that's where I'm wondering, so I mean, somebody could move along for another 20 years and get up to 10,000 bowling balls per week. And then they come in and say, well, I was making bowling balls in incorporation, so I should be able to continue making bowling balls. I'm making 10,000 a week.
Then
I was
just
only
ship
doing
it out
10 a
more
week.
frequently.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the expansion. When do you stop the expansion? You
Yeah,
know?
well, when he gets a special exception, the special exception is going to describe the business activity that is permitted. And in that description, we can say you can't make more than 1,000.
Right, but what if during incorporation, in the 2006 period, he was only making 10 a week? And now in
Yeah, but how do we-
2013, I'm making 10,000. I don't know. I'm just saying that
But I don't think we can
there's that
possibly know
possibility.
that.
We're just here to make a recommendation and.
No,
But you couldn't say you can't make 10,000 a week now because, I guess you can make 10,000 a week. I understand you're only making 10 in 2006. That's where the problem comes in.
Yeah, I know, but we don't know, I mean, how do we know how many he was making?
You don't, but if somebody comes to try to get approval and says, I'm making 10,000 a week now, you can say, well, wait a minute.
I don't
You just
think we're
started
gonna
last week and making
regulate the
10,000 a week.
side, I think I don't think we are there to regulate how much they sell. We're just talking about pre-existing businesses, what they do, what their product is. We're not there to control their business. That's the economy's job, right? I mean, am I missing something
Well,
here?
no, not necessarily. but
Well, I mean, I'm talking about the size of the
We're gonna
buildings
give
and
them a
everything
special
is based on building code.
We're going to give them a special exception.
Right,
And in that special exception, it's going to set some conditions.
right.
One of the several of the conditions can be, for example, hours of operation.
Right.
The size of the business, and any other regulations that are necessary to make sure that it fits with the character of the town.
But we are not there to tell people how much money they can or cannot make. We can control the size of their building, we control the size of the use of their land, but we are not there to control their pocketbook. So in that,
I'm not saying that.
I understand, but I just want to make sure I'm following the flow of this conversation, because I'm getting a little bit concerned. We're there to say, you've got this much land, you can do this building, you were there, fine, you cannot diversify in other products. Yeah, if you made gator bags, okay, you want to make raccoon bags, that would be okay, maybe, because it's still a wildlife product. But I don't know, maybe that's, I'm just saying, you can't diversify into 1 minute you're making, because there's somebody who makes the gator bags, you can't go and say, okay, now I'm carrying a clothing line, is what you're saying. You can't keep expanding the business, you stick to what you were doing.
Right. I mean, I hear where Todd's coming from.
But that's
The
what
the biggest problem that I see in something like that is how do you know if they've grown to the, because I mean, if you go from 1,000 to 10,000, that's a pretty big leap, and you might see it, but you might not. But I mean, when they hit the $1 million or the million widget mark, then you're like, well, wait a second. I don't know, how would the town address something like that if all of a sudden you went from having 10 customers showing up to this legacy business to all of a sudden having 1,000 customers showing up?
Well, if he was doing it all within 100 square feet, he'd have a little limitation.
That's
No,
what I'm
but
saying.
this has nothing to do with square footage.
No, but what I am suggesting is that the other guys.
That's a
No,
tricky
Beck, what I'm suggesting is the other regulations and the other codes in place will help regulate
No.
this.
No.
I can think of a construction company out here that was 2 acres, they're in corporation. If you look now, they're like 8 acres.
Right.
So should he be able to continue with 8 acres, or should he go back to the 2 acres in 2006?
Okay, now-
That's my point.
Okay, now, we're saying that these businesses need to get a category B special exception, which is an administrative special exception. In that special exception, the town staff can set conditions. If the property owner doesn't like that, he can bump it up to a category A special exception, or he goes through the process and the town council decides. That's a much more rigorous process if he wants to go through it.
All right, let me respond to, I have a comment to your example. So we're saying in 2006, you had a property owner who was in a construction business. He is not diversified. He's still in the same business,
Right.
but he's just using more of his land.
Do you go back to
So what?
well, because he's got a bigger impact on his neighbors now. So the whole point is, it's a special exception because it's not a normal and customary practice,
But
and
my-
now he's expanded it.
Right, but my comment is, and that's where, as we're making our recommendation, it's an existing business we're trying to allow coming in, they haven't diversified.
Can we add something in the recommendation about something like that? If the impact is increased by,
Yeah.
I don't know, the verbiage, to the neighbors or to the community,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's above and beyond.
And the town staff has the ability to bump it up to a category A special exception also. I mean, if it comes in and seemingly is a category B, staff looks at it and says, wow, this is really impactful. I think we need to review this by category A. Then the business has to go through a much more rigorous process and gain approvals from the council, who can set any conditions of approval if they want to.
Jim, let me ask you something, in this situation, say you've got an existing business, hasn't diversified, don't we have building codes and accessory uses in place that say, okay, that's great, you're existing, but okay, and again, maybe that's the problem, is, are we saying that we can't touch their accessory buildings or anything if we go with the pre-existing?
I guess maybe that's where the expanded deal is they can't expand further than what they're at right now.
No, I'm
Not
just-
increasing their sales, but they can't expand further from where they're at right now.
Mark?
That's why I think it's, I mean, it's easier to administer it if we do that, because we can define where they are right now.
Okay, Mark?
And then say, okay, that's it, no more.
Mark?
Let's step back a second and think about what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
And the genesis. I mean, the genesis of the issue occurred first. We had a complaint and we had some hay sales operations that were going on throughout the town.
All right.
And we went ahead and council directed the town management staff to develop some regulations, which we were in the process. Not everybody was happy with those. And then actually, the historical legacy came out of this committee, I believe it was Howard's
Yes.
recommendation. And we took it to town council, and they liked it, because
Everybody.
what it did is, it provides an opportunity to be fair to a use that was existing prior to the incorporation. The one thing though that you have to balance when you're looking at this is the fact that, you may remember, we were talking last week, or last meeting about residential enterprise and home occupations as it relates, and you guys, I think, took a very, very wise and prudent decision and said, well, limit that to services, not to commodities. With this, you could have a potential commodity issue depending upon what the use is. So I think you have to balance, and I think Jim's done a good job so far of trying to address what you all thought was a good idea in terms of fairness to somebody who had been there, but at the same time, you have to be careful, because you could allow that somebody dealing in commodities to just, have a use that's gonna impact areas in a neighborhood.
So you say subject to review then, like Jim's suggesting, perhaps? Is
I
that
mean, I
what
would
you're
think maybe we
advising?
even put more restrictions on it in terms of the special section review. I think that's where you guys are going, it sounds like.
Because I don't have an issue with them, like if they sell 100 widgets today and they sell 1,000 widgets tomorrow. If they do it within the confines of what they were when they started, like the hay people in particular is a good example. If they're getting 2 truckloads of hay a week right now, and they increase their business to 5 truckloads of hay a week, but their impact on their property is still the 3 trailers sitting where they've been, personally, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, they're my neighbors, they're my direct competition. I don't have an issue with that because they've increased their business without increasing the impact. But listening to what he had to say about his contractor going from having an impact of parking his, I'm guessing he's parking tractors or whatever, on 2 acres, and all of a sudden he's got 8 acres of industrial
Right, industrial
stuff
warehouse.
parked, that now, I totally see that side. But I don't have a problem with somebody selling more widgets as long as their impact is similar.
Look, I agree with you all. I don't think we need to get totally obtrusive where we're getting into somebody's private business. But don't forget, in order to accomplish this, the burden of proof is on the applicant. So I would say, we're going to have to be tough in terms of making sure that the applicant really can prove they meet all these requirements. In a case like maybe not, did you have 2 acres in 2006, or did you go to 8 acres?
Florida
what happened?
tangible tax return shows your assets for that year.
If you report them.
Virginia,
Well, if
you've
you
got,
didn't have any assets, then they're not gonna be on that property, are they? 2006.
yeah, you've got an issue with that trucking operation on North B. Didn't that kind of grow
Which
significantly?
one? Like I said, you go from
The one
Southern
just
to North
south of
Road. B Road's a perfect example for this committee. Yeah, there are semis and dumpsters, right?
Yeah.
We have, the phony nursery, and we can basically call a property tax appraiser and have their ag exemption. At least the town can make some tax money off the property.
I mean, in this one, I think the devil's in the details. I think what you want to do is, you want to make sure that this regulation does give somebody who is in existence the right.
The opportunity to continue doing what they're
Under
doing.
the right circumstances, but you
But
don't
not
want
take
to
advantage of
let
it.
somebody take advantage of it
Right.
and do an expansion like Todd suggested.
So
The
on
guy
that-
said he was around in 2000.
On that note, can you guys come up with some extra wording to
Okay,
do
Nina?
that?
Yeah.
Just
Public
one
comment.
other issue that hasn't been covered is building expansion. I understand it's a little bit more difficult with, when you're saying there are 3 trailers there still, and there are 3 trailers still there, that's fine with me, even if they sell more. Or he's saying in this case
That's a
tractors,
valid
it's harder to tell, but building expansion may be something that also needs to, kind
Well,
of-
building expansion that required a permit, you could track it very easily. The question then
Just
becomes
go online.
if the expansion occurred without
Legally.
proper. Yeah, legally. You might be able to prove it via aerial, photos and things like that, if we have them,
Just go online to Palm Beach County Building Department and see if there's a
Let
permit.
me ask
or not.
one that I get concerned about. We've got some people that run unregulated multi-trailer housing of non-citizen, illegal workers, whatever. I mean, it's one where they don't have reasonable controls over septic tanks, water supply, trash.
That's
You know,
not
they're
even
just-
permitted, it's not, I mean, that wouldn't even come under
Well,
this.
no, but if they were doing that back in October of 2006,
That's not even legal, is it? It
We've
is
already
not
had several of those kinds of
2007.
cases that we've had in code.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, John, is,
I mean, is
doesn't
it
it have to
possible
be
for them to
legal, a
qualify?
legal use? It has to be a legal.
It would have had to be
No.
legal.
Well, none of these businesses were legal either.
No, no, I'm
That's
talking,
also health and public safety.
No,
Well, that's
I'm talking about the health department, I'm talking about the health department, you
But I
have to
mean,
have.
what if this property owner came to you and said, well, you know, I've got my business in October 1st, 2006, was letting old mobile homes or recreational vehicles be used as housing units for temporary workers. And I want to continue doing that. I mean, would they qualify under this?
I don't think our code allows recreational vehicles to be used as dwelling units. I have to double check that, but I don't think.
They're not
we-
even in compliance with health
Yeah.
standards.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the whole purpose of this is to allow uses that are not allowed under our code, but existed in 2000.
That's what I'm concerned
To
about.
continue to exist.
Because,
Right,
you know,
but
our guys are not going
Somebody
out
could
and
go
doing
and
these
ask.
septic tank inspections and.
But I think that,
members.
but there's a line there, I think the differentiation is the use that's not being appropriate. And if there are aspects of other codes that are being violated, like sanitary.
Must
codes,
meet
things like
other
that,
regulatory.
You can't look the other way now and go, oh, because they're there in 2006, they're okay.
No, but they must meet
Yeah.
other
So
regulatory
maybe we need to
guidelines.
put that in there as well.
Well, my concern is that you're
Some
not
health
going out,
regulations
you're
or
not
whatever.
going out there
Yeah.
to evaluate the health regulations. And
Nor do
that's
we
a
have the
business.
resources or personnel, that's why I emphasize the fact that the burden of proof
They must
should be on
provide
this
you with
applicant.
their
Saying,
health
yeah, well, I was here in
department certificate
2006,
for the
God
septic
bless
tank
you,
and
Lord,
well.
just show us, you know.
Okay, so if they come in and say, I want to continue to rent out these trailers on my property, you know, you say, well, you know, have you got adequate facilities to house those trailers there?
I can't imagine that those people would come in.
Don't forget, this historical legacy is very broad, because you don't know what, you could be talking about all kinds of uses that we're not
Well, I
going
mean,
to know.
what, you know, I mean, I'm aware that some neighbors have
But that was never legal, but that was never legal in
Okay,
conforming.
all right,
Ever.
let's try and move, okay, so we're at 7:38 here, let's,
Okay, the last part that I wanted to bring up, if you look at section 75-30 on page 18, getting down into the setbacks and lot coverage. They have some specific regulations there, but if you go to page 21,
yes, I like that.
there's a section in the AR zoning district that also deals with minimum setbacks in non-conforming lots, and they're not the same. So there's an inconsistency between those two sections, and the simplest way to apply the setbacks is the way that it's addressed on page 18. So what I did was I'm just recommending that we strike that whole section of the AR zoning district and just make a reference back to the non-conforming use section in section 75.
Okay, and let me be
That-
devil's advocate, Jim,
Sure.
that we all know that Florida statute regarding ag regulations for bona fide ag will apply. This will not affect bona fide ag properties, because we've already had our umbrella statement, correct? Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes. Yeah. Well, all we're doing is talking about the setbacks on non-conforming lots, okay? And they're different in section 75-30 on page 18 than they are on page 21 in the AR district. So something's got to give there. We have to change one of those sections to make it consistent. And I'm suggesting the easiest way to apply those setbacks is if we use the section 75. So I say let's strike what we have in the AR district and just make a reference to the non-conforming setbacks in section 7.
Are you saying we should have them the same?
Yeah.
Well, if it's non-conforming,
Well, they're both talking about non-conforming lots. So it's talking about non-conforming lots in two different sections in the code, and it doesn't say the same thing. It's got to be consistent.
Why would they both be non-conforming?
yeah, that's what I'm confused there. If it says all buildings and structures in the agricultural residential zoning district shall comply with the following minimum required setbacks. Well, residential is a conforming use, no? Am I mistaken in that?
Well, no, we're talking about, this refers specifically to lots that are less than 5 acres. We have setbacks in the AR district that essentially apply to 5-acre parcels. And then there's another section that says, okay, if you're not conforming, meaning that you're smaller than 5 acres, you can reduce those setbacks to certain levels.
But does that say that here on the, and the 20-035, that this is for less than 5 acres?
A non-conforming residential lot.
No, on 20-035 on page 21 of the
Exceptions.
Yeah, I'm talking about section 20-035B.
Gotcha, I got it, okay.
That says what setbacks are going to be on lots less than 5 acres.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
And again, Tim, if these lots are less than 5 acres and they happen to be agricultural,
Whatever,
ag, Florida statute.
whatever rules are applying to ag would apply. This is not
Okay,
superseding
just, okay.
anything we've already done.
Right.
And that's it.
I have some concerns that Jim didn't bring up.
Howard?
My first question relates to section 75-005, purpose and intent. Maybe I'm reading this in the wrong mindset. First of all, it says the purpose and intent of this article is to regulate and limit the development and continued existence of lawfully established uses. Do we have the intent here to limit the existence of a lawfully established use? Is my first question. And then the next sentence says, structures and plots established on or after October 1st, 2006 that do not conform to these regulations. I mean, I'm lost here. I don't know why.
Well, the first, let me comment, Howard, we talked about family stuff here, that it's, so it seems to be that, yes, they are trying to limit the development and continued existence because these properties, these businesses can only be turned over to family members.
Well,
So
no,
you-
these are people that have moved in after October 1st, 2006. This is a different
Okay, all
group.
right, on and after.
To limit the
I
development
see,
and
on and
continued
after.
existence.
Yeah, these are people that came in non-conforming and they don't qualify under the grandfather limit.
Okay.
So they're just limiting that they can stay within their grandfather issue, but they can't continue. They can stay within that legacy clause, but not go further than that. That's the limit. Not all lawfully established uses.
So the purpose and intent, that's the purpose and intent of 005. That's not the purpose and intent of section 75.
Well, Article 75 is non-conforming uses. So for all non-conforming uses.
That would be the purpose and intent of Article 75. That's what that is.
It's tricky.
Of the entire Article 75.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I can see what you're saying here.
But so then it,
Because this is dealing, to me, this is dealing with a different class of people.
right, but then so much more in Article 75 deals with
Legacy,
legacy and legal
yeah.
prior to 2006, which is why I don't
Well, I
see
think
continuity
The
here.
reason why you might be having some problems with it is you gotta remember that nonconformities, the goal is to eliminate nonconformities. In any code, nonconforming property rights are valuable property rights that are given to somebody because of whatever the circumstances are, and they're allowed to continue, but they're not allowed to continue in perpetuity. The idea is at some point they're going to be made
Go away.
a
And be
conforming
legal.
property.
No, but,
So that's why you see that language in there.
but 005 looks like, as Howard was saying, it's a general application to everything in section 75. And then section 75010 says, okay, now we're dealing with stuff existing as of October 1st, 2006. And the purpose intent said established on or after
Or after.
2006.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I
that's a
think,
different group of people.
There's my conflict.
yeah, I think when, if you substituted the word existing for established, it structures and plots existing on or after
That doesn't help
2006.
us.
That doesn't help it.
Well, we're talking about, the legacy uses were existing at that time. They may have been built before that, but they were existing.
Yeah, but not after that time. That word after is my problem.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
That word after.
And on or after 10/1/2006.
On or before.
A different group of
There you
people.
go.
Yeah,
On or
should be
before.
prior to or.
Prior to.
Before
And up to or whatever.
Yeah, there you go, prior to and up to.
established on or before. Okay. Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Well,
Nina, hold on, Nina,
I-
did you have a
say
comment on this
you might
section?
be- You might be
Well,
making the
my-
whole chapter invalid.
My
And you're only talking about one class of user now.
Or when we get back to the lot size, is that your comment when on the
This whole
lot size?
section.
The whole universe doesn't revolve around those that were there before.
Well, that's the whole universe of the non-conforming uses that we're approving as grandfathered, isn't it?
Well, that is pulled out in 75010. You got the more general, and then you're pulling out the specific issues. I think maybe the language is not perfect, but that's the way it's supposed to work. You're talking about the whole universe of nonconformities, and then you're taking out that population that were existing as of 2006.
All right, well, then just take out the whole wording on or before or after October 1st, 2006. You're saying the purpose and intent is to
Yeah,
regulate and limit
I just want us to be careful because
Yeah.
that do not
How about you
conform
direct
to.
us to think about that?
Yeah.
But directly think about that.
Rather than make up our mind right this
Right, I
minute.
mean, we gotta be able to read this and understand what it
Yeah.
really means,
Right,
rather than
we're
have
just,
to debate.
right,
That's the idea.
that's an advice, we're advising you to think on that.
Ponder it some more.
There you go, think on it, all right. let's
Okay,
get
I have,
back-
wait, I have one other thing.
Yeah.
Okay, 75020, section C. Okay, it specifically says at the bottom, nothing herein shall prevent compliance with applicable laws or statutes relative to the safety and sanitation of a structure occupied by a non-conforming use. Okay, if you read everything that comes before that, it says repair, alteration, okay? I mean, if we're trying to say by that last phrase that if the guy has his roof falling in on him because it's an unsafe structure, he's allowed to repair the roof, then I think we need to say that, because the first half of that whole section C leads you to believe that you're not allowed to be doing that. I think the intent was not to allow them to alter it or enlarge it,
If
but-
you have,
but to repair it to make it safe is a different story.
all right.
Well,
We'll look at it. I think, the idea is that obviously you have a non-conforming property protection. So generally, you're right. If there's an issue with a life safety code, a roof, a sanitary facility, you're not talking about that. But what you don't want is if a property is getting non-conforming property rights protection, you don't want them to start doing what might be construed to be cosmetic improvements
Mhm.
that then are going to extend the life of the non-conformity. See?
Is it relative?
Sure,
You wanna
as
get
far as
rid
a
of
life
non-conforming.
safety issue, you gotta let them take care of the wiring or whatever the
well,
problem
and
is.
I think that might be, if you want to add a sentence in that section, then see that,
Yeah, it may not be, you're right, we may have to look at that.
add a
wording and see if
sentence
it's that.
there that, repairs to roof, wiring, et cetera, are permitted, but no upgrade, you know,
That
you want
have
to say
to-
no upgrades.
that have to do with safety and sanitation are permitted.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
think
see
that's what
color.
this says.
Yeah, but it doesn't really say it.
Can you ponder that somewhere?
It says not to exceed 25%, which,
Just make it more clear.
Yes.
There you go.
Nina?
I think you just solved it. I mean, I don't see any difference between when the building burns down, you're allowed to rebuild it on the same footprint.
Right.
And what Howard's point was just there, you know, it's, you're not expanding it. And frankly, if you're in a position of having such a business, and all you can do is hand it over to your wife or your son and daughter,
You need,
how
yeah,
much money do you want to stick into this thing, honestly?
But on your comment, you're not necessarily allowed to rebuild it on the same footprint. It's, if it's damaged more than 55%, you can't.
You can't redo
You have
it.
to build it in conformity.
Right,
Now it's a new thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
So how do you deal with insurance?
With what?
You take the insurance proceeds and go somewhere else and do something else.
or you become conforming,
Well,
is
now-
what he's saying.
Now, to a case in point, this says structures used for non-conforming uses. Now, if you have a non-conforming structure and it burns down to the ground, you should not be allowed to rebuild it in its non-conforming way, but it needs to come up to conformity. However, if you have a non-conforming use on the property that requires your barn to be there and the barn burns down, are you allowed to rebuild that barn according to building codes in order to continue the non-conforming use?
Okay. In terms of nonconformities, you have a number of different, you have lots, you have non-conforming lots, you have non-conforming buildings, you have non-conforming uses. Some codes even go as far as doing non-conforming characteristics of use. And what that would be like is in commercial, if you're supposed to have so many parking spaces and you don't, technically it's non-conforming, or you have some landscaping requirements, you don't comply, it's non-conforming. But that's really getting into the minutia of it. But generally, the use is considered the highest degree of non-conforming. And a building, you're right. A building could be non-conforming in many ways. It could not meet a setback. It could be, it could not have enough floor area if there's a requirement for that. It could violate by virtue of height. There's so many ways that it could be non-conforming. So you have to separate. First of all, what do you have? It could be a combination of use, the building being non-conforming, and even a lot. You could have all of them working on one. So you've got to separate everything out and see what you're dealing with. So now to your question, you're saying if it's a non-conforming building, but the use is conforming.
No, the other way
The other way
around.
around.
I'm saying if it's all non-conforming, a non-conforming use
Okay,
in a non-conforming building,
okay.
or a non-conforming use in a conforming building, it doesn't matter, because this says structures used for non-conforming uses. Okay, so if I have a non-conforming business
Mhm.
in a conforming structure,
Right.
okay, and the hurricane comes and destroys that structure, according to this, am I allowed to rebuild it on the same footprint to continue my non-conforming use? Because the whole idea was not to put these people out of business. Now, if they've suffered a loss of their building due to a natural disaster, should they not be allowed to rebuild on the same footprint as long as they don't increase the size and intensity of what they previously did?
Well, remember, your premise was that it was a conforming building, so yeah, that's not a problem. They use the loop.
But they can't build
They
it
can't
on
do the
the,
use.
but they can't do the use within there?
Yeah. His comment was it was a non-conforming use in a conforming building.
Right.
The building burns down. There's no problem with the building, but you can't do the use now. You lost the use.
In that building?
Yeah.
That's what I think was not the
I think you
intent.
gotta separate all the potential issues for
Okay, the intent was not
That's why
to
you
put
should
the
have
guy
said
out of
about
business if
separating
the
the
hurricane
lots.
knocks down
That's
his
important,
building.
because that's
The
handled a whole
intent was
different
to
way.
allow him to continue, or his son to continue, making widgets.
Right. You
Now-
shouldn't, an act of nature, or whatever you call it.
Or just.
But now, here, look, I agree with what you're saying, but here's the question.
Well, we all
Let's
get
say-
flooded out.
Let's say they have a wooden pole barn, hurricane takes it out, they come back and they make a steel pole. But it, I mean, you can make it look like a bunch of old telephone poles. It's a conforming building, it's a pole barn. And all of a sudden, the hurricane takes away, now you come back and you make a super nice I-beam with gables and the whole 9-yard barn. It's the same barn on the same footprint, but all of a sudden you've changed it from an old shack to a Taj Mahal.
We're not gonna regulate
So now
that.
let's-
What, as a town, what have you lost?
I'm waiting for that.
You're not touching that
There's
one,
still
are
a
you,
lot
Mark?
of moments.
We're shaming you.
We're not saying this.
Yeah.
It's just saying that there could be an issue. Why?
He was
Not
Just
gonna
bring
take
it
the
up.
bait? Okay. So what you're saying, again, what I'm hearing is that you're concerned that acts of God would,
Or just attrition over
we
years.
should have a statement in there, which, Jim,
I'm listening.
did you have something to address that? Did you have a suggestion, do we just simply put a sentence in there that acts of God do not eliminate?
Acts of God are in cases of health, safety, and sanitation. Repairs or replacements may be made in the same footprint as the previously
Is
existing.
an act of God just that it got old?
Well, if it gets old, then it's a matter of
That's a normal
safety.
definition, no, that's-
Is
We're
it
not
safe
talking
to stay in that
about
building when the
five-story
breeze rain will fall
slide.
down on top of it?
So it's in perpetuity as long as it stays within the town, is what you're saying?
That's how we wrote everything else.
We're gonna
That,
get
I'm just asking, I'm not against it, I'm just saying.
Well, there are some codes that will actually, you know that you hate this word, they'll use the notwithstanding word, and they'll say that basically, a non-conforming residential property will be allowed to rebuild under an
Right.
act of God, but never a commercial non-conforming use. I've never seen that anywhere.
Okay, well,
That may be out there, but I don't know.
let's kind of wrap this up, because I want to get to page 20 and 21, so, yeah,
So
Can you guys look at that some more?
there?
come on.
Here,
Move
go.
along. So the issue was, there was a conflict between the two
Yep.
pages on lot size. That was the original discussion that has expanded. And we still have not resolved that. Anita, is this the point where you wanted to make a comment?
Well, yes and no.
I suggest you make your comments, because who knows if
You
we're gonna
actually
get.
made the non-conforming use have less of a setback than anybody else. And there's probably a good reason for that. Because, if you look at, you have, what was it? 50% of the required setback for a non-conforming plot.
If it's 1 acre, if it's a real small lot,
What page are you on, Anita?
page 18.
Okay.
18. And you have 25% between 1 and 5 acres. So if I have 4.5, I get to go and actually use my land. And
Look at
if
this
I'm
chart, I love it.
5 acres.
Oh, man, did
and
I
this
just
is
walk
actually-
into it, didn't I?
I'll go here so the camera can see it. Yes,
Please,
how did I like being in newspaper?
I just stepped right into this one.
This is actually not a complete picture. This is just a 50-foot setback. Now, there's 100 feet on the front. Now, look at this 5 acres, and look at the usage, and this was done by a surveyor, by the way.
Okay, so 50.
So, he's accurate. So you have 50, that is if it was only 50-foot setback
Okay.
on the front. It's not, it's 100 feet. So this is even reduced from there, and I haven't done the calculation, what that would be. It wouldn't be 59, it would be less of usable land
With which one?
with 5 acres, just taking a 50-foot setback all around it versus 50 foot on 3 sides and 100 foot on the front.
Okay.
Or if you have a corner lot, affecting the other side as well, okay? So you've lost, you've said to everybody that you can only use roughly half your land. And this is the standard size for lots such as gross, 5 acres.
And where are you saying we said that you can only use half your land by which
On
page 8
page 21, it's the one that's not colored in,
that we haven't talked about yet?
that you haven't talked about
Yeah,
that.
that I said
But
when
you're
you-
referring back to this one,
one.
Right.
And now if I'm in 4.5, I get to reduce that. So that's why I'm kind of jumping in now, and because
Right, so we need to go to
you have to
20 and
understand this
21.
one first in order to
Okay,
then be
what's-
able to grasp the other one. And, you know, in the 10 acre, it's a little less of an, that number's not right, it's 64.
Okay.
So I mean,
All right, so
Plus a bit of
we need to look at pages 20 and 21 is in this discussion.
Well,
So, and
well,
I'm
my
happy
only
to
point
leave
for bringing
up
this
here
up
for you.
was that they need to be consistent. 20-035E needs to be consistent with 75-030. They both need to say the same thing, regardless of what it says. They have to be the same.
I go with the least amount of setback is better. I mean, there big
Yeah,
chunks
we're
of
not
land.
looking to increase the setback, Jim. We don't want to increase the setback on anyone.
Well, none of
Decreasing it.
these all decrease.
These setbacks are bigger than Wellington setbacks. I mean, Wellington is like 25 feet from your back. Yeah, I own property in Wellington.
Yes,
These are larger setbacks.
I've looked at Wellington as well, and Wellington has 25 feet.
That's what I'm saying,
All the way
this
to the
is
back.
bigger.
This is
than
worse.
Unless
25.
they're older lots,
This is
and then maybe
worse.
then 7 and a
I
half.
have it in my truck if you want me to go get it. These are worse, is what I'm saying. In
Yeah.
Wellington.
Right, these are worse.
So,
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's good the other way.
Yeah,
And really what that brings you to is that you have a lot of non-conforming buildings. There's my neighbor, there are a bunch of people, I can look around, you can look at aerials, and you'll find that you will have non-conforming buildings up the wazoo.
I guess we're trying to be the town of Palm Beach here or something, I don't know.
Well, so you want to keep the setbacks the same for a 1 acre lot as a 5 acre lot?
No, what I'm
The
saying is you
ratio.
have to
We need to
get
have
an
a
idea
ratio.
of what your setback should be that are more reasonable, and then work from there.
Okay, well, I think that's a whole different task than what we're doing here. I mean,
This is non-confined, I understand, this is non-conforming
Yeah.
structures we're talking about. But again, which sections have to match, Jim? Which sections we're talking about again? 75?
030B. And section 20-035E,
Okay, that's the one I'm having. Where's that section?
page 21.
Okay, hold on.
what Jim is saying, and he said this a million times, and it finally just clicked with me. Real simple. For non-conforming lots, we have two different
Yes.
definitions for setbacks. And all he's saying is, pick one.
yeah.
Right, I understood that, I understood that, and that's what I.
And then we can talk about how big the setback should
Right,
be. And we can go back to like 5 inches or something, but
Right.
which is the more
Restricted.
restrictive?
You know, I'd have to do something like what Ina did and look at different lot sizes too, because we have different percentages in section 75, depending upon the size of the lot. If the reduction is substantial if you're a 1 acre lot.
Well, there are two different criteria. I mean, the one on 20-035 is a percentage of the lot depth. And the one on 75-030 is whatever the nominal amount was, it can be reduced
Times 50%, yeah.
by 50%, but I don't see the amounts that would be reduced by 50%.
Yeah, I'd have to come up with some scenarios.
Can you do that?
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah.
'Cause-
Not right now, but,
No, I understand.
Next meeting.
yeah, we can come back with
I think if we're gonna be on the setback deal, Madam Chair, can we talk about like actual, what we should suggest to somebody about what setbacks we should have? 50 feet and 100 feet is absolutely ridiculous.
I'm even looking at a 100-foot by 100-foot lot, and Jim thankfully struck it out with apply a 25-foot setback on, what are you gonna have to build on, okay?
Believe it or not, though, and I've seen these kind of setbacks in areas that have large lots, like, anywhere from 2 to 5 acres, and they do have very ample setbacks. Which, yeah, you could
But can you not, so that, does that mean you can't put a fence on your property line?
But,
No, it's for the building.
It's for the building.
no, we do have another problem with the setbacks, and that's one that needs to be fixed also. When it comes up to the definition itself, what is a pen? What is, part of that whole issue between what
You mentioned that
was
last
brought
time.
up earlier, was that, pages.
I mean, I can understand not building a house or a building, a structure, but if you're gonna have a pen, a corral, that you're gonna put your goats in or your horses, I mean, if you're allowed to have a perimeter fence, now you can't put a cross fence within your property? Oh, no, that has to go within the setbacks. Are you kidding me?
And again, that would be for, bona fide ag is protected. We're talking more like somebody who's not bona fide ag, and we still have outrageous setbacks, so you have to put, I mean, you might want to put it back to protect your livestock, so because it's going to end up getting stolen around here.
Madam Chair, here's what I would recommend though. I would say, because this wasn't, could we have the same issue come up? This was not identified by council, although yes, it is an
Yeah.
issue. I would make a recommendation. I don't want to commit any more staff time until I at least get council to indicate, yeah, we're going to give you more funds, because otherwise we're running out of money.
Right, yes, we are.
So I would say that, let's identify it, if you see it, you think it's a problem,
I
make
think
a
we should talk about
recommendation
it.
that, the council that, hey, at some
Setbacks
point you're
should
going to have to look at
reduce in
this.
this.
And then if we,
And we will limit it to 1 hour,
Yeah.
60 minutes,
But I do have
maximum.
a question on, hold on. Yeah, I do have a question on page 21. Yeah, fine on the, like you said, that on the lot size. I'm looking at item 2,
Where are we?
page 21,
number 2.
item 2.
Maximum lot coverage?
And actually, item 1, yeah, shall not, okay, and again, here we're trying to regulate something that we've already said Florida state statute shall apply, correct?
No, it's
No.
non-conforming.
No, that's not, yeah, that's non-conforming lots, and it's got nothing to do with agriculture.
Well, no, she's looking at,
Oh.
I'm looking at page 21.
I'm looking at page
She's looking at
21.
residential zoning.
Yeah, I mean, it's all the same, because you have it in the same section. You have it, I mean, the label for this entire thing is non-conforming uses, right?
Yeah. And-
But remember though, it's geared toward residential, because even under farm protection, the one thing you have to get the permit for is the actual residential structure on a farm.
Oh, I understand.
Because it's not agricultural.
Yes, you're right, exactly. That's the one
Okay.
thing you do have to meet all the requirements for, get the permits for.
'Cause it's not agricultural.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I understand that. I am looking at so we've made a suggestion, and we'll get to making a motion shortly on the lot side. The setbacks need to be reduced. And we can move on to pages 20 and 21. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at the top of 20. We conveniently, residential zoning districts. Is there an area in our town that's simply residential?
What's that mean?
It's agricultural residential, and that covers 98% of the time.
Right, so why do we have Article 20 that says residential zoning districts?
That's the title in the code. Yeah.
So is that incorrect?
You're suggesting that we change that?
No, Jim, I'm asking a question. I'm not suggesting
Yeah, well,
anything. I'm looking for clarification. I'm confused because we refer to our town as being ag residential,
Right.
okay? And then when I see Article 20 simply refer to this as residential zoning districts, that's,
Well, here's what it does.
there's areas in the city that are residential zoning districts. We're supposed to be ag res.
He is correct, though. If you look at our ULDC, Article 20 is residential zoning districts, because even though it's ag res, I think it's considered residential first. It's the only residential district we have.
But.
When you get to the section, does it then call it ag residential?
No, it does, but if you look back, one
No,
paragraph.
I'm looking at the code, the actual code itself, not
Right.
just that section.
I know, but I'm looking at this, which is
Yeah.
just one paragraph before. It says, lots located in ag residential zoning districts are subject to the following standards. And then it goes, Article 20 residential zoning district.
See, this is why, yeah, this
What, is it repetitive, is it talking about ag res, is it just talking about res?
Well, you just wanted to change the title of the zoning district to agricultural residential.
Yeah, and I'm just looking for
There's no
clarity,
problem
well,
with that.
only because, Jim, dealing with building codes and knowing, and looking at our map, when you say ag res and then you say residential, I'm gonna say to you, please show me where the residential zoning district is and where the ag residential is.
And we don't have any
Because ag
residential.
res is one classification, is it not? It's a combination.
It is, but it's also our only residential.
I
And
understand
that's,
it.
and per the,
I
per the
understand that.
plan requirements, for the comprehensive plan requirements, you have to set out residential. And that's, I mean, that's just the way it is.
You can't put it as ag residential.
Well, it is, it's residential, but it's ag residential. It's
It's
just like if you had
ag-
multifamily residential, or you had, you see what I'm saying? You know,
Right, that's okay.
Single-family residential versus multifamily residential versus rural estate residential versus ag residential. You know what I'm saying? It's.
But
just
it's
a
not
type of-
resident, and my point though, and I'm gonna argue this, it's not residential only, and therefore it should be referred to as ag residential.
So people understand what
Okay with
it's
anything.
It might make a difference with state statutes and regulatory commission.
I would have to research that and see if there's any.
No, I
issue.
could, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
it's a
I mean, that's not even a ULDC issue, that's more of a, I think it's more of a comp plan, but we'll check it, because there, don't forget, the plan is up here, and there's your ULDC, you're trying to make your ULDC consistent with your comprehensive plan. Did the town do a good job there, are we good, I don't know, I have to check that.
Well, all I'm asking you is to check as far as zoning classifications.
Okay, the land use designation that goes with this district is called rural residential.
Yeah.
Right,
That's a residential land use category.
okay.
Okay, so this is the residential zoning district that implements the rural residential 5 land use category.
Well, how about calling it rural residential?
Well, we could.
You could do that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
How about
Right, I'm
that?
just not comfortable with the residential, is that?
I
No,
suggest
I'm
that
using the word ag because
I suggest we add rural or ag.
whatever the classification, I just want to be specific, if it's rural residential.
We can call our zoning district anything we want to.
Yeah. But the generic term is residential, and then whatever you call them, what you call them.
I suggest we gotta add all of it. All in favor?
Aye. Aye. Okay,
Five to
but we
zero.
need to make a
Go.
motion, the recommendation, there was a recommendation on setbacks, we haven't made a motion on that.
Well,
No, that's typically-
You're gonna look
Yeah, she said she wants to, yeah.
No, I thought you needed.
To the council.
No, no, to the council, you're right, absolutely correct.
Sorry about that.
So,
You guys were talking about setbacks, you wanted them reduced, we had to
oh,
make a
so
motion to advise the
somebody needs to make a
council.
motion
Study
to
setbacks.
please have the council advise us to advise, we advise them to advise us to let us look at them.
I'll
Just say
be by
study.
them to,
Recommend the council
Make a
study
motion
setbacks.
to make a
Reduce the
setback
setbacks.
from the back, both sides, and 25 feet from the road. That's my motion.
Make it,
Did she speak
Could you
about?
state
make it
that?
5 feet.
What? Could you state that again?
Hold on,
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
We're goofing on.
Yeah,
Do we need to make a motion
Right, make
to
it
ask
now.
council to ask us to look at setbacks?
The motion you're making is a
it's
recommendation.
not for
basically.
us, it's
It's a
just in
recommendation to
general.
tell them to, that you believe that the code needs to be examined. If you want to say reduced, put that in there, whatever you want to say.
And then let me ask one more point for the motion. Did, Jim, when we were on page 19 and we went through page 19, and Pearl, have we addressed the issue, we made recommendations and suggestions, did we make a motion on that?
On which
Page
item?
19, we
75,
reviewed that,
35?
yeah, we reviewed that in detail.
Yeah.
We talked
Yeah, we
about
got it.
specific items.
But you guys did say, and I don't know if you did get this in the motion or not, you did say that you want us to potentially look at some additional criteria that you
Yes.
have.
Yes. Do we need to make a motion to do that?
But I don't think you did it by motion.
Do we, my
Do we
question,
need to?
Well, you did approve substituting the word notwithstanding with despite.
That's the last motion we did.
Wait a minute, because you guys talk for an hour.
What are you talking about?
This was discussed 5 pages ago.
okay.
Okay,
specifically looking for section 75035, we went through A through
What you
G.
did was, this is what you did, you asked Jim to make certain, to review them and to make certain changes. On section 75035, on item E, you wanted to be included that on the code violations, that it had to come into compliance.
And just as a clarification on that, this one we can do because we're working on that under a separate work authorization. It's kind of crossed over with these two efforts. And so we can work on that because that is one we're doing right now.
And I believe
Okay, and then
also,
on section C, Mr. Ryan requested, and Mr. Beck, that we would include in the operations under section C, that it would be allowed to be diversified and expanded into another business activity over and above.
Would not be allowed.
Yeah, that would not be allowed. And also G should be included, under G, it should include A through F, not A through E.
And after the word inspection and review.
Oh, I didn't get that,
Yes,
John.
undergone an inspection and review.
Yeah.
And review.
did we make a motion, did we need to?
I'm getting to that point.
Sorry.
Reference to the sale of a transfer, then we went back to C, and then we talked about the sale of the transfer to a non-family member will be null and void. And then we discussed the expansion, and we discussed maybe we shouldn't do expansion. And then we set special exceptions, will set certain conditions with respect to business. We went back to that, and then we addressed the issue of building expansion, the building's expansion that requires a permit. And we talked about if they did it, if it was non-conforming and they got a permit, then we could be able to track it. And then we went to section B, with there's no inconsistency with 20035, and then we recommended using 75030 and strike out the references in the 20035 to be consistent with 75030. Ag rules would apply to these non-conforming lots that are ag. And then Mr. Boren questioned several sections that were addressed by staff to bring back 75005, bring it back to the committee so we could discuss that further. And section 75021C will also be looked at and clear up the language. And consideration about acts of God should be included in that section. And Jim should also look at setbacks as well, and Mr. Cutney recommended that you recommend that the council look at setbacks in their review as well. So, and then you recommended renaming Article 20 to rural residential. And that was the only one that y'all voted
Unanimously to do.
that's
Okay.
immediately.
That
But
was
all
the motion,
those
that's it.
items, I thought those were what y'all were recommending
do
that we
want us
go
to-
back and address.
Right,
You
that's,
do want us to look at additional criteria. Is that, I'm going to reaffirm that, because we can do that now,
What additional criteria on what?
on 75035. That's
Just
what
wanna
we
make-
talked about the fact that, because it's dealing with commodities, it was kind of like what Todd's concern was about.
Yes.
Somebody had 2 acres, but now they
Yes.
have 8 acres. And one of you, I think it was you, that you said, can you add some more criteria? And we said, yeah, we probably could do that, we'll take a look, if you want us to. That one, we don't have to say go to council, because we're working on this right now, so that's why I didn't say.
Do we have to vote on it?
do we, okay, and Pearl, what I'd like to ask you, so for those who would like to make the motion, all those items you just discussed, can we make a motion? Do we need to make a motion for all those items? Or can we just say these are recommendations at this point? Because I know the town council needs motions apparently just for us to make a recommendation. Or no, we can just simply say we recommend.
If these were all your suggestions and nobody objected to those, and these were things that we need to include in that and bring it back to you, is that okay? If that's okay with you, or you could make a motion to all these items that
As
y'all
read by
discussed,
you.
that were read into the record. If there's anything that's left out, you need to let me know right
I'm
now.
going to let you know right now.
Okay.
Under the act of God thing we were discussing.
Yes, sir.
I
So close.
I eliminated to notice that under F, okay, there is a mention of reconstruction. And it basically says if,
Where are you? I'm sorry.
Tell me what
75-020,
On page 17.
Yeah,
Go.
item F.
Yes, you did,
reconstruction.
you did discuss that.
That was not discussed. We were discussing it under C.
Oh, that's.
But you gotta go back and look at F as well, because that's where it's reconstruction is
C,
specifically
51.
addressed.
Right,
If
so
the hurricane blows your building down, it's certainly gonna cost you more than 51% of the value to replace it.
Okay, well, also then I put it in under section 75021C and F.
Right.
Will be looked at and clear up the language.
Okay, so
Do we need to make a motion, or can we just
we
go
can,
on?
as read by,
We'll clear up the
Well,
language in
not
order
the
to
town
possibly
clerk.
allow people to rebuild it.
what do
That's the idea.
as read by the
Recording secretary.
recording secretary, thank
How
you.
about if I just, whoever makes the motion and seconds it, I will include all this in the motion.
I make a motion that we accept everything memorialized by the recording secretary to be looked at by management.
And is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Can we move on to item 3?
Well, you talk, Madam Chair?
Oh,
I know you have some.
We're out of money.
It's 8:20.
yes.
I know you have some members now. 87 is going to be a very important chapter. I'm not going to be able to go through that in 20 minutes or so, but that's got a lot of interesting issues. We also have this number 5 hanging around, which I'm not suggesting we do it today, but that's the discussion of questions on for the AGO.
What about 6?
6, we're ready to go with that, but that's going to be a long discussion.
It may or may not be. Did everybody look at signs?
You want to tell us,
It's
go
gonna
ahead.
be long because we gotta look at pictures. And I didn't bring my glasses.
The pictures are pretty
What
large.
do you recommend, Mark?
Well, it just depends how long you guys want to go. I mean, I heard some of you wanted to leave by 8, so.
Well, somebody who wanted to leave by 8, who needs to?
I haven't eaten.
I haven't drank.
Talking about time.
Excuse me?
I had a question.
Go ahead, Nina.
Talking about time spent and for management and you guys, why are we looking at county code with balloons on top of buildings and such? Why don't we grab something that's closer to us, that makes more sense, and look at that and get through it a little faster? Kind of a better cheat sheet?
Okay, would item 7 be a quick item? We've already discussed this. What is item 7?
Item 7, we provided information to you. The vice mayor had acquired some information from both the city of Port St. Lucie and Highlands County as it related to the issue of the residential estate and the gentleman who wanted to sell guns. You may remember, we had this thing before council a couple of times.
Yes.
And it kind of relates to, now, we had a discussion about the home occupation in the residential estate last time, and you gave some direction. He had asked me, was it included, and I said it wasn't included in your last agenda, only because I'm taking it like you guys are reviewing our code, not other codes. That would be more like a staff function if so directly. And I think because he felt that the information was pertinent, we provided it to you, so you could take a look at it. And I would suggest if you want to talk about it at another meeting, we can talk about it.
Yeah.
Wasn't that residential enterprise?
And home
Instead of residential
occupation.
estate.
We've
Oh, I'm sorry,
already made recommendations to the town, right? We've already made
You've
multiple.
already made a recommendation on it, yes.
I make a motion that the recommendation we recommended to the council remains the recommendation that we made to the
But
council.
that's residential enterprise, that's not home occupation.
Well, we did do home.
Yeah, it was part of the whole
Yeah,
deal.
we did talk about it. Remember, we talked about different classes, and you guys, one of your directions to us was only on services, not commodities.
Right, I remember that, but I didn't know I thought that Councilman Gerald had wanted us to review the home occupation details and some of these other codes that might be important for us to consider.
Well, yes, he did, and that was my point. We're here to discuss our code, not other codes. That's taking the direction, that's why I'm saying, these kind of little diversions are what's causing us to go into the hole in terms of the funds.
Here's my suggestion on this whole deal is, if the town wants to pass something like that, pass it. If they asked for our opinion, we gave them our opinion. I mean, apparently they don't like the opinion we're giving them, they can do whatever they want.
You're catching on to the town. That's the town
And
in a nutshell.
if we're running out of money,
You
because
just caught
we're
on.
discussing, we've already voted on it. We were all agreed, or did we not?
Yes.
Okay, boom. Thank you. I make a suggestion that we already have told them twice, and this is the third time. This is our suggestion, do whatever you guys want to
Other
do.
than services, did we spell out any of the details in home occupation that, you know?
We talked, well, what I did was, I provided an example of how you could take home occupations into 3 different categories based upon intensity. One could be a full-blown special exception review, one could have lesser review. Jim gave you examples of, from another code, of a whole bunch of different types of home occupations. We discussed whether you wanted to get into actually starting to allow, like in the most intensive home occupations, a solo practitioner, doctor, or a dentist. We had all that discussion. It was a pretty
Right, you
lengthy
were going to
discussion.
bring back the suggestions on a tiered.
Yes,
approach.
exactly right. And then you said, yeah, that's what you know, that's the recommendation we need to give to council on that.
So we,
But it did not address the issue that the vice mayor is concerned about as it relates to somebody doing a commodity, as Mr. Klein in the gun says.
but the place we went on that was no. We said yes for services and no for commodities.
That's what you said, yes.
So it is addressed. We did address it, we did vote on it. We
And
did-
all I did was, I just furthered those codes on to you, we put them in judgment.
We can put a little check mark by
Do
7.
we say anything about, you know, no employees other than family members?
In my book.
Oh, we've got it as 7.
No,
Yeah, we
they
did talk
want
about that a little
dentists,
bit, back in
you
time,
I
can
might
in
have
fact, that you could add a whole bunch of additional restrictions to safeguard the town
We
if you
can't-
if you
we'll
decide
go
to go to
with-
that kind of system.
I don't care about the number right now.
Oh, it is, you know what, it is number 8, it's not even listed on our agenda.
I
What's
think,
number 8?
It is number 8.
Discussion of residential enterprise and home office.
Number 8, yes.
I think what the mindset might have been, under home occupation, if we have a tiered approach, which allows a dentist to see by appointment only a client. Number one, that would require an employee, because every dentist has a hygienist. Okay, but above and beyond that, I think the mindset on the vice mayor's part might have been, as long as it's within their own home. If you're going to have a dentist do an appointment-only thing, then possibly the gun sales could be a similar thing, where one person comes, it's in Billy Klein's home,
But that's not a service.
sells them the gun, but that's not a
I agree
service.
with you, it's not a service, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
If all he did was transfer guns, that's a service. But the instant he sells a gun, then it's not a service, it's a sale.
Right.
If all he did was receive guns from somebody else and transfer them over, and they paid him the $25 transfer fee, that's a service. As soon as he sells them an actual gun, then it's no longer a service.
To
And
kind
the
of-
ATF will not give you a license if you're not selling weapons. You
What I
have to
thought
actually
is, I
sell
provided
stuff.
you the codes, if you all want to go through them and give us input next meeting, that's fine, but what I didn't want to do was take a lot of time discussing some other entity's code. We're having enough fun just doing ours.
With all due respect to the council, they brought it up, we brought it up, we've talked about it 3 times, and we've discussed it ad nauseum
Mr. Klein
again,
needs to go make a turn.
and
Okay,
that's where we're at.
we don't need to make a motion here.
I just had a question. You guys were tossing, and my memory may not be there quite. Did you make a motion or did you not make a motion how to establish whether it was home office? Because I think there was a discussion with not using homesteading, but using the driver's license instead.
Home
I just don't
occupation,
remember.
not home office.
Home occupation.
Occupation.
They had to be the resident of that.
Okay,
of that-
You're right, there was a lot of discussion about that.
Right, and I just don't know whether you ever actually took a vote on that.
Okay, so at this point, Mark, do we need to make a motion here? Can we just say we've
No,
already?
you don't need to.
Yeah,
You
we-
can voluntarily do it if you want, but you don't need to. There's no.
But
Yeah,
what's the
we've
motion?
already-
Has a motion ever been made as far
We
as?
made the motion last time, did we not?
Yeah.
This has been over.
You weighed in on it.
Have we
Okay.
got it covered in the minutes?
I believe so.
Perhaps that's the issue.
I'm hitting my foggy point.
He's seeing all kinds of pinks and
Yes,
yellows.
it's covered under number 8. It goes for a page and a half, so.
Okay, and the one other topic, it's short, if we can wrap up this, did we make a we confirmed we made the motion?
read it to you. Let's see, discussion to, okay, after about page of information, motion, committee member Ryan made a motion to recommend to the town council that residential enterprise be kept in the code
All
currently.
right.
The motion was seconded by committee member Bourne, that passed 5-0. Second motion was made by committee member Bourne to recommend to town council that home occupation be by appointment only and be service-based businesses only. The motion was seconded by committee member Ryan, and that motion passed 5-0.
Well, there you go, so it's addressed.
Wait,
If they want us
now-
to address
now-
it again, we've already
No,
had.
now the other question now is, you need to have residents, because you brought up the fact that somebody could come and just rent an office from somebody and not be living there and run their legal business from there.
I think that was in
Didn't we do
the,
that?
So the question at hand now is.
no, I think that part was in the stays as it is, where you have to be a resident.
Right, so how do you prove residency? We discussed, Brandon had weighed in on that.
All right, so we're done with this topic, basically.
Fine.
Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
What I would like to do, wrap it up, I just want a 5-minute discussion, and we will table it for the next meeting, okay? But we put this one off and off. Item 3A5, discussion of questions for the AGO brought up by committee member Howard Warren. I would like you to give us a brief description, and we will table it to the next meeting, but I want to start on this one. Page 47 of 117. And you have, these are your questions, so however you want to
But
start.
were these the new ones or the old ones?
I don't know. This is just how it's presented.
Basically,
Just give us a synopsis and we will table it and start.
okay, these questions for the AGO were recommended because these are the constant questions that keep coming up, that really don't have any definitive answer, and they've required too much debate over too long of a period of time, and I believe it'll put all those things to bed.
I'd like to object. I think we're out of the ag business, and we're not gonna help anybody by trying to get into controversial areas that are properly the domain of the property appraiser. And, I just think that we're creating a controversy and spending town money that we don't need to do.
Well, here's the thing you have to decide on this. I mean, you can have the debate at next meeting, but I think ultimately the decision that you all need to make is, number one, whether you want to recommend the town council that they go forward and seek these, because this has to be done by legal officers, so that's the town attorney. So that's the town council agreeing to direct attorney and incur the expenditure, asking the attorney general opinion. So I say that, I would say, Madam Chair, that next meeting, this is what you're going to debate, decide, and give a recommendation to town council.
Okay, and I just want to ask one thing. So Howard, you feel that the umbrella statement we made earlier today does not cover this issue?
No, because over the years I've experienced that these are questions that continually come up, and as far as expenditure is concerned, do we eat up town staff time continually by having residents argue what the Florida statutes actually say, or do we just bite the bullet, have the town attorney ask for an AGO opinion, and then all this stuff is just put to bed, and there's no further discussion?
So really the question is, should we tell the council that maybe they ought to send these over to the AGO so we can get an opinion? Okay.
That's the synopsis.
It's not, it's agriculture determinations that are not ours, they're not the town's, they belong to the property appraiser. And Howard, if you want to hire a lawyer and go argue it with a property appraiser, that's the way to deal with it. We need to keep the town out of this, because it's like saying, we want to rely on the state statutes and the court opinions, but now we want to get in the middle of all of those things and say, well, AGO, we'd like you to go into the statutes and go into the court opinions and help us understand the details of this, this, and this, and that's just not our role.
All right, so now we know where the discussion will start, but as I want to remind you, Mark, I have asked for you to look at that FWC
We will put
information
that
that
on the
may be
agenda.
relevant to this discussion. And if you could please look at that court document I gave you, whether you think the whole thing needs to be included or 1 or 2 pages. But I think, just
We'll try to do a synopsis.
Yeah, that's all that's really needed.
Provided.
Okay, but we know where the discussion will go. Motion to adjourn? Oh, we'll table the topics that we have not discussed to the next meeting. I'm sorry, Braden, that we didn't get to your signs. I apologize, I
second.
really do.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you, guys. These are all mine?
Be better than more.
Mr. Warren? It was a pleasure.
Oh, it was a pencil.
Ms. Standish?
Buenas
Buenas noches.
Buenas noches, señor.
Okay, go ahead.
I gotta get my coffee cup.
Fill your coffee cup. This one sucks. And it's funny that you fill a coffee cup.
It is a coffee cup.
Yeah.
It's an
No,
insulated
I
cup.
almost hit erase Perla. No, hand it back to her. I don't know how to
Bill,
stop
come
it.
here, I can't even figure out where you save on this computer.
Oh, no.
Like it's blanked out.
Good night, everyone.
I can't lose it.